Chapter 21:33. An ordinary-looking van shuttled through the streets and gradually drove to a remote place. It had already arrived at the edge of the city and then stopped in an abandoned factory. The door opened, and a few men in black quickly walked out, and a coffin-sized box also came down. "Hurry up!" Several men in black quickly carried the box to the front of a manhole cover in the factory. They opened the box and saw a man wrapped in bandages all over his body. Even his hands were bound and bandaged like a mummy. Even so, the guy in the box still struggled fiercely and even let out beastly howls. "Don't blame us, Robert. You can't wake up. We can only feed you to the rats." With that said, several men worked together to move the thing in the box out, and then quickly threw it into the sewer with the manhole cover open. They had no idea how many sewer creatures were down there, but it was obvious that such a dirty place was not rare. In such an underground sewer with high levels of bacteria, a normal corpse would quickly rot. As for what kind of pain they had to experience before death, they couldn't imagine it. If they didn't follow President Balam's instructions, they would likely be the ones to experience this pain. The manhole cover was quickly closed, and the men quickly got into the van and left the semi-abandoned factory. However, the people in the van didn't know that not long after they left, a drone slowly landed. Not long after, this semi-abandoned factory welcomed another tenant. A Holy Light Nation's latest commercial vehicle slowly stopped, and a young man got out of the car. The young man looked thoughtfully at the direction the van left and quickly found the place that had been tampered with. The young man came to the manhole cover, squatted down, and reached out to touch the manhole cover. "Coagulant? It seems that they want to seal this place." They really did it. The young man shook his head and quickly found an iron bar that temporarily acted as a crowbar to pry open the manhole cover again. Suddenly, an indescribable stench assaulted his face. The young man frowned and covered his mouth and nose with a handkerchief. Then he turned on the flashlight of his mobile phone and looked at the movement in the sewer. Under the bright light, the young man easily saw the scene below. A person whose entire body was wrapped in bandages, most of his body currently soaked in ink-like sewage, and all around him, even his body, were already covered in many rotting rats. They were crazily gnawing at him. The young man couldn't calm down and felt his scalp go numb. At this moment, the young man's mobile phone suddenly rang, and he quickly picked it up. "LeVar, what's the situation?" This young man was the private secretary of the school principal, LeVar. "According to what Mr. Arthashe said, I sent people to watch the entrance of the hotel and discovered some people quietly driving out. After following them, I indeed found the person that Mr. Arthashe mentioned, the one who was wrapped in gauze. Is he dead?" "Not yet." Laval shook his head. "But I'm afraid he's feeling worse than death right now. He was thrown into the sewer and the rats are biting his body." "Got it. Since he's not dead, let's save him first." "Okay." LeVar heaved a sigh. He disliked this job from the bottom of his heart, but for the sake of saving people, he should respect life. This thought flashed in LeVar's mind. He took a deep breath, held his breath, and climbed into the sewer directly. Ladinin didn't cry or make a fuss. Her unexpectedly cooperative attitude surprised the enchanting secretary, but she knew that Nan Xiaonan couldn't escape even if she had wings. So, she just thought that Nan Xiaonan chose to be obedient because she didn't want to be tortured. After being brought out of the dungeon, Nan Xiaonan and Yulia were separated from Yulia. She was brought to a bright room and placed on two tables that looked like operating tables. Their limbs and waists were shackled by metal buckles. Looking at the blinding surgical lights above their heads, it was easy to imagine horrible things. For example, a dentist who was slowly approaching them with a buzzing electric drill. "What are you going to do to me?" Nan Xiaonan asked in a trembling voice. Even her teeth were trembling. "I thought you would keep quiet." The enchanting secretary stroked Nan Xiaonan's face with her finger. "Since we still have some time to prepare, why don't you guess what we are going to do to you?" I don't think I have any tooth decay." Lady Nin decided to be naughty in this situation to ease the atmosphere. "What an interesting guy." The enchanting secretary suddenly chuckled. At this moment, A few guys wearing masks and protective suits came in with a few carts. The secretary didn't talk to Nan Xiaonan anymore. She just greeted them and walked into another room. The two rooms were separated by a huge glass door. "Excuse me, Miss Secretary, I'm already like this. Even if I die, can you explain it to me?" Lady Nan wanted to cry, but had no tears. In another room, the enchanting secretary smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, you will be an important asset no matter what. We won't let you die so easily. We just plan to put a little something on you. What do you want?" The enchanting secretary didn't answer. At the same time, the people in the other room started to move. Some prepared the syringes, some prepared the knives for surgery, and some started to adjust the instruments. Seeing that one of them was about to put a respirator on her, Nan Xiaonan suddenly shouted, "Wait a minute!" Everyone in the room stopped and looked at the enchanting secretary on the other side of the glass partition. "What else do you want to say?" The secretary frowned. At this time, Nan Xiaonan quickly said, "Do you really think that I'm just a woman who gambles and loses? Since I'm from that family, why don't you think about why I'm here?" The secretary's eyes narrowed. From the beginning, she was against the agent catching this woman. However, the casino couldn't be exposed. Even if they didn't leak the information about the dungeon, just the illegal operation of the casino would bring some unnecessary trouble. She shouldn't be caught, but she shouldn't be let go. In for a penny, in for a pound. Pushing this woman to the operating table was one of the best options. "Why did you come here?" the secretary asked slowly. Nan Xiaonan immediately sneered. "What? You're really surprised? Don't tell me that no one knows what you've done here. The Freedom City is so big, and there are so many capable people. Do you really think that you can hide from everyone? Now that several Supreme Masters are here, you still dare to commit crimes. Should I say that you're fearless or brainless?" "So what?" the secretary said indifferently. "As long as you don't leave here, no one will know what happened here. And you can't leave here. Lady Nan, it seems that you don't have enough bargaining chips. Since I'm here, I can't act alone." Nan Xiaonan chuckled. "Seeing that I've been here for so long, there are still people looking for me, and they won't give up until they find me. You must know the power of our family, right? God knows what background Miss Maid wrote for me when she made this fake destiny. Anyway, it's true that she had scruples about it. However," the secretary said with a smile, "as long as you don't get out, the people outside will find you. Otherwise, they won't give up. That is to say, as long as you appear, there won't be any problem." Lady Nin couldn't help blinking her eyes. She was the one who said the reason. It sounded so reasonable. How could she refute herself? "You'll be able to get out soon." The secretary sneered and waved her hand. "Start the operation quickly. We have to let this lady leave here as soon as possible." With the order, someone covered Nan Xiaonan's mouth and nose with a respirator. The gas was released. Nan Xiaonan's eyes rolled up and then closed. Heartbeat is normal. Blood pressure is normal. The target is in good condition. Then start the implantation of the chip. The estimated time to complete the operation is 40 minutes. Soon, the operation table was turned over. Then, as if a small tuft of Nan Xiaonan's hair was lifted, a pair of scissors was taken out. The secretary in the opposite room glanced at it casually and then sat aside. Then, she picked up a magazine and started reading. There was nothing interesting about this kind of operation. She had seen it many times. Now, she just had to wait for the operation to be completed. "This bag is not bad. You have to sleep for several nights to buy it, right?" "You're right." Abruptly, the enchanting secretary who was flipping through the impurities raised her head and saw a brilliant smile right in front of her eyes. The secretary sucked in a breath of cold air and instinctively jumped up. She looked at the other person in horror, at the woman who should be on the operating table. Nan Xiaonan. In another room, a few people who were preparing their homework in front of the operation table found that the person on the operation table had disappeared. They were also panicking. "You? How did you come here?" "How did I come here? Of course I walked here." Lady Nan's eyes were now curved into crescents. Just like this. As she spoke, Nan Xiaonan's body began to gather and become translucent, as if it was condensed by smoke. "You're a Saint Power user?" The enchanting secretary's pupils contracted instantly. In a breath, the enchanting secretary reached out and jumped back nimbly. The distance she jumped back was about 2 or 3 meters, which was not a distance that ordinary people could jump, and it was so easy and natural. The moment she landed, the secretary immediately pulled up her skirt and pulled out a short pistol from the inner holster of her thigh. Without saying anything, she began to shoot at Nan Xiaonan. Bang, bang, bang. The bullets easily penetrated Nan Xiaonan's body and even caused a few wisps of smoke to flow and then directly shot into the wall, until all the bullets in the pistol ran out. At this time, Nan Xiaonan picked her ear, narrowed her eyes, and smiled. Originally, I wanted to rely on my talent to make a living, but the reality is always like this. I have to cheat to play. I'm also very distressed. This really reminded the secretary of the tone of a very annoying school in the City of Freedom, the Scholars of Versailles Palace. A Saint Power user? The secretary shook her head at this time. So, I'm also a Saint Power user. After saying that, a crackling sound suddenly sounded. The enchanting secretary's muscles began to grow rapidly in an instant. But in an instant, her enchanting body even doubled in size, just like a King Kong Barbie. Under the support of the muscles that broke the clothes, the secretary sneered and directly punched violently with her legs. The Black Soul's atomization was the least afraid of this kind of physical attack. Nan Xiaonan had just learned this new ability. At this time, after passively taking a few punches, she instantly turned into a wisp of smoke and entangled the secretary's body. Her neck was very long, like a snake, and after a few rounds, she detoured to the secretary's front. The smoke tightened and turned into a rope, instantly constricting the secretary's hands and making her unable to move. Let me go. Let me go. It seems that after the clothes burst, the IQ will drop. Let me go. Even though she was entangled by the smoke, the secretary didn't stay idle. She directly used her body to hit the surrounding walls, trying to knock away the smoke that entangled her body. Nan Xiaonan didn't bother to pay attention to her. She was more and more aware of the benefits of this Black Soul's body. Physical immunity, in a sense, was simply immortal. But she didn't know what the upper limit of this immunity to physical attacks was, for example, whether it had any effect on the kind of fist that could break space and so on. Of course, as the king of the dimensional crack, she wouldn't find someone to test it on. At this time, under the constant collision, the secretary even saw stars. She fell to the ground, gasping for breath. The violent body gradually returned to its original enchanting appearance. Nan Xiaonan's neck was still high in front of the secretary's face. She said with a smile, "So according to the general development of the script at this time, in order to not leak the secret, you should resolutely choose to commit suicide?" With that, the smoke separated and turned into a sharp thorn, slowly pressing in front of the secretary's forehead. The secretary's eyes widened. Lady Nan chuckled. "Come on, don't beg for mercy. Don't make me look down on you. You're the one who doesn't follow the script, okay?" The secretary only felt cold all over. The sharp thorn on her forehead, even though it was still a few millimeters away, vaguely sent a tingling feeling to her. At this time, Lady Nan suddenly stopped and muttered, "Did she really shout?" Great witch of Xing Chuang in Nan Xiaonan's heart. Yulia's call suddenly appeared at this time. Am I going to start my first business as a Black Soul envoy? Chapter 21:34. This made people despair. It was clearly so bright, as if the room was filled with holy light. When the light shone on her body, she could even feel its warmth. Yes, it brought warmth. However, Yulia did not have any more memories of this room. Every time she walked into this room and woke up in the dungeon, she did not know what happened in between. She had been living like this for dozens of days. At first, she had the habit of silently counting the time, but later she found that this behavior seemed to be meaningless. Counting the time meant that she could know what day it was outside, especially when it was that important day. She felt that she would really go crazy. Today, Yulia was struggling very fiercely. At least, for those who often captured Yulia from the dungeon, she was indeed more agitated than usual. However, They had many ways to deal with this situation. For example, they could punch her in the stomach. "What are you doing?" A reproachful voice suddenly sounded. "If you hurt her, how are you going to explain it? She is too noisy. She just needs to be quiet and obedient. You knocked her out. Isn't it better if she fainted? Since we have to knock her out anyway, it's better to save some effort now." Yulia did not move. She knew that she was different from usual today. Since the newly captured woman said that the Holy Maiden ritual had begun, and there was a girl named Yulia outside, she knew that she was not normal. She closed her eyes tightly and tried to make herself look like she had completely fainted. She did not know if this was effective, but it seemed to be effective. The people in the room did not take any further action. Based on her sense of touch, Yulia felt as if she had been lifted to a cold and hard place. The cold air even caused her pores to react. A shiver involuntarily rose up in her body, but she didn't dare to make any movements. When the people in the room seemed to have relaxed their vigilance, Yulia opened her eyes a little hesitantly. She really felt that she had never been so bold before. Her heart was pounding as if it was about to jump out of her chest. In her narrow vision, the people in the room were preparing something behind her back. Yulia couldn't see anything else, so she could only listen more attentively. She wanted to know more about what would happen after she fainted. "Are you still going to let her out today?" "It should be. Didn't Mr. Agent already arrange it? I hope you don't have to accompany some guy. Don't ask us to clean it again like yesterday. Really, I hate cleaning other men's things and women's bodies. If it's tonight, it definitely won't happen." His companion said casually, "Ready, let's begin." He turned around with the usual silver syringe in his hand. The guy with the syringe casually came to Yulia's side. Without looking at her face, he lowered his head and pulled open the clothes on Yulia's arm, then slowly injected the syringe into her blood vessel. But at this moment, a hand suddenly grabbed the man's wrist. The man was stunned subconsciously. He saw that Yulia, who should have fainted on the table, opened her eyes. The man seemed to have never encountered such a situation, so he couldn't make an effective response in an instant. But at this moment, Yulia had already grabbed the man's wrist with both hands and pushed the syringe into the man's thigh. Damn it! The man was instantly furious, covering his thigh with both hands. After the anger, he turned pale with fright. "She's awake. Catch her! What the hell did you do to me?" The girl's almost uncontrollable scream resounded in the bright room. But the men in the room had already rushed to her at the same time. How could she resist the encirclement of several adult men? After a short struggle, she was rudely pressed to the ground. The guy with the syringe in his thigh gritted his teeth, pulling out the syringe and throwing it on the ground. With a furious face, he ran over, grabbed the girl's hair, and lifted her head up. "You don't know what's good for you. How dare you?" The man spat on the girl's face. "Do you really think that you're a Holy Maiden candidate? You're just a filthy... Fine, I'll show you what you really look like." Seeing this injured and furious guy take out his phone, his companion seemed to know what he wanted to do. "Wait, you're too much. Don't worry, she won't know anything after the data is deleted. But I want to see this woman's face when she breaks down." The man's expression was gloomy. "Everyone has downloaded those wonderful things, so don't think you can tell on me. You bastard. Hurry up." The phone was slowly placed in front of the girl's eyes. The man squinted his eyes. "Don't you want to know what happened to you? Open your eyes wide. Don't miss a single frame." Light and shadow began to intertwine on the girl's face. The girl gradually felt cold. She felt as if she had become stupid, unable to think. Her mind had become blank. As for the man's unrestrained and joyful laughter, it was far, far away from her. This is really a room full of despair. Done. The man's companion directly grabbed the man's arm, snatching the phone from his hand, frowning. "That's enough. You're really going to break this guy?" He released the girl, but she didn't move at all. Her appearance was no different from those girls in the dungeon. "Inject her with hypnosis again, in case she pretends to faint this time." "Humph." The man snorted. "This time I'll do it myself." When did the door open? On the wall of the bright room, the door had been raised, but there was no one at the entrance. The men in the room frowned. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared at the entrance. It was the enchanting secretary. But the secretary lowered her head, so no one could see her expression. But the people in the room, especially the man who hadn't calmed down, turned pale. I didn't do it on purpose. I was just impulsive. Sorry, I won't do it again. He was panic-stricken, hurriedly explaining something. But the secretary in front of him suddenly rushed forward. Plop! The secretary directly fell to the ground. Then, an arm stretched out from the door, greeting her. Hi! With a hi, Lady Nan directly walked into the bright room. Weren't you sent to? Nan Xiaonan actually didn't resist killing people when it was necessary. Of course, most of the time, she didn't need to have a deep hatred with people, because the weak ones would be killed by her, and she would also hide from the strong ones. Except for the secretary who still had a weak breath, the other guys in the room had already stopped breathing. Of course, the secretary was kept for more information. Anyway, the weak ones couldn't get anything useful from her, and only the elite ones like the secretary could. At this moment, Nan Xiaonan clapped her hands. She glanced at Yulia, who was lying on the metal platform, expressionlessly staring at the ceiling without blinking. She subconsciously frowned. She picked up a cell phone from the ground, swiped it casually, and looked at it carefully. Then, she had a general understanding of the situation. The enchanting secretary moved at this time. She struggled to get up, but her arms couldn't support her, and she fell to the ground again. Lady Nan came to the secretary, squatted down, and shook the cell phone in front of her. Is this why you caught so many girls? Humph! Didn't you see it? The secretary sneered. You're really stubborn. I'm going to drill a hole in your head, but you still don't say anything. At this time, Nan Xiaonan sighed, but I don't know if the other guys here will be as tough as you. What do you want to do? She felt an ominous feeling was approaching. Nan Xiaonan narrowed her eyes. The operation you want to do on me, there should be more than 1 or 2 people here who can do it, right? I don't know what kind of effect it would have on you. How about I let you experience the full set here? With that, Lady Nan quickly turned the screen of the cell phone in front of the secretary. Light and shadow quickly intertwined on the secretary's face. She was completely stunned. It seems that you're looking forward to it? Lady Nan smiled. Then I won't be polite. Don't worry. I'll record it and let you enjoy it. She didn't know whether this terrifying woman would really do such a thing. But obviously, she didn't dare to bet on this possibility. Wait a minute, don't mess around. I'll tell you what I know. Is this the thing that manipulates the consciousness and bodies of those girls in the dungeon? Between Nan Xiaonan's 2 fingers, there was a chip the size of 2 fingernails. Through the implantation of this chip, she could directly control the girl's movements. Nan Xiaonan understood that this was a temporary fabricated personality to replace the original personality of those girls. Why do you do this? I don't know. Oh, arrangement? Wait, I really don't know. The secretary said in a panic. The agent never told me what the real intention was. Although we can know what these girls did according to the records after they came back, I really don't know what the real intention is behind this. Nan Xiaonan pondered and casually operated the instrument here. There were many records on the instrument, not only about Yulia, but also about those girls in the dungeon, and some of them were not seen in the dungeon. Those who were not seen might have been disposed of. Here, why are some of the records blank? I don't know. It happens occasionally. The secretary said in a low voice. Basically, every individual will have a similar situation. Once at most twice. After they go out and come back, the record will disappear. Even the agent doesn't know what these blank records are. Are there any standards for the girls you choose? For example, Holy Maiden candidate? Nan Xiaonan thought and asked directly. The secretary shook her head. There's no special criteria. Although Yulia is a Holy Maiden candidate, the others aren't. Other than the fact that they're all young and beautiful girls, there shouldn't be any other connection. Moreover, every time the agent gives the target to us, and then we get the target. Aren't you curious? Nan Xiaonan looked into the secretary's eyes. I'm curious. The secretary gritted her teeth. But I won't ask. This is the way of survival. Why? I have the blood of sin that can't pray. The secretary shook her head. Most of the people here are the same. We can't appear in the open. The agent can give us a place to stay. Nan Xiaonan suddenly grabbed the secretary's hair and snorted. You are lying. You can see my destiny. I can't. The secretary said anxiously. I can see destiny only because I am a holy ability user. I really can't pray, and I can't open the destiny in my body. What is a holy ability user? You are one yourself, don't you know? The secretary was stunned. Huh, arrangement? Holy ability users have different bodies from ordinary people. Almost all of them are born with it. We have some abilities that ordinary people don't have. The secretary said hesitantly. In addition, holy ability can't be used too often. It will speed up our aging. Those who use holy ability too much will eventually have their body damaged. But many times, we have to use holy ability. For example, like the situation before. Where did the agent recruit you? We came from a land of sin outside the 7 capitals. The secretary shook her head. The environment in the land of sin is too bad, so sometimes we have to take risks and sneak into the 7 capitals to get some survival materials. Once, I sneaked into the city of freedom, and the agent suddenly appeared in front of me and told me that I could work for him. You agreed just like that? What can I agree to? The secretary said indifferently. Anyway, no matter how bad it is, it won't be worse than the life in the land of sin. It's just selling yourself. Compared to survival, it's nothing. Nan Xiaonan blinked, changed her posture, and gently stroked her bangs. Since you can sell yourself for survival, then why are you afraid that I will arrange things for you? Do you think I care about being played by men like a toy? The secretary sneered. What I care about is that my will doesn't belong to me. Even if I fall into hell, my body and my soul must be the same. This is the only belief we have as people from the land of sin. That sounds nice. Miss Nin shrugged non-committally. After that, she didn't ask the secretary any more questions. Instead, she walked in front of Yulia and looked at this body. At this time, the secretary hesitantly asked, I know, I already told you, you can go. Lady Nin said casually. You're letting me go? The secretary couldn't help but open her mouth in disbelief. You've already told me so much. Mr. Agent probably won't let you go. Nan Xiaonan shrugged. I don't need to do more work. Besides, since you're a guy who can do anything to survive, you will probably hide after this and wait for the wind to blow over. After the wind blows over, I'm afraid you won't be able to find me. Of course, you can stay and wait for Mr. Agent's anger. The secretary was silent for a moment, then slowly nodded. Thank you. Lady Nin made a gesture of picking her ear, and she even flicked the dust. What did you just say? The secretary took a deep breath and gritted her teeth. If you want to deal with the agent, you must be careful. Because behind the agent, there seems to be a guy who really controls everything behind the scenes. How can I find this guy? Lady Nan's eyes slightly brightened. I don't know. The secretary shook her head. But you could try to go to the agent's study. It seems to be the place where he always contacts the person behind the scenes. I've never been there. The room is tightly sealed, and the agent has never let me in. Anyway, you have to be careful. With that, the secretary turned her head and walked out quickly. Her hand was ready to open the door. But at this moment, a pool of blood like a dahlia bloomed in her chest. Her heart was instantly pierced. It was the spike formed by the twisted smoke. The secretary looked at the blood on her chest in disbelief. She twisted her body with difficulty, wanting to see the woman who went back on her words. However, she saw that Nan Xiaonan didn't look at her at all, but continued to look at Yulia on the table. The spike slowly withdrew from the secretary's body, and then retracted into Nan Xiaonan's palm little by little, until the secretary slowly fell down. She didn't look at her from beginning to end. Although I am not a good person, but you are really. The secretary's heart had stopped beating. That's true. If I didn't let you go, you could have told me more. Miss Nin muttered at this time. Why don't you be more cautious when you come out to mingle with others? In your next life, do you want to be reincarnated into a good family? Shaking her head, Lady Nin slowly put her palm on Yulia's forehead. What should she say? While thinking, Lady Nin asked tentatively, Dear guest, do you have anything to tell me like this? Mr. Luo. In front of the Rose Mansion, the male assistant of Mayor Duran stood straight beside a black commercial car. Boss Luo just came back from outside. Hello, Mr. Luo, the male assistant said respectfully. According to the mayor's order, I'm here to take you to the competition venue. I didn't expect to see you as soon as I got off the car. Maybe you appeared in time. Boss Luo smiled casually. Isn't the competition starting at night? Before it starts, there are rehearsals and other work to be arranged. The male assistant said. In addition, the judges will give some time to discuss some details. Okay then. Boss Luo nodded. Mr. Luo, do you still need to prepare before going out? The male assistant asked again. There's still plenty of time. No need. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, in fact, I haven't found suitable clothes. That's it. I can go now. The male assistant nodded, opened the back door of the car, and put his palm on the car frame. Mr. Luo, please. Chapter 2135. Flame. It was the aura of flame. The dark cell was suddenly illuminated by the flame. At the same time, the closed door on the wall was suddenly opened. The girls had no choice but to walk towards the door. They didn't dare to leave this dungeon. Their mentality didn't allow them to do so, but the spreading smoke had awakened their instincts. The girls fearfully stepped out of this dark dungeon and tentatively walked to the world outside the door. They found that the flame was everywhere. Those terrifying guys were now busy putting out the fire and running away. No one had time to care about them. Escape. Like a sudden clap of thunder in their numb hearts, a thought was born in the hearts of the girls in an instant. Escape. Escape from this hellish place. Escape. Escape from this place. Escape. The door of the study was kicked open. At this time, Lady Nan came in with Yulia on her shoulder. But there was someone else in the study at this time. He was rummaging through the cabinets, looking for something. His pockets were bulging, and he even stuffed a lot of things in his arms. He was taking advantage of the situation to loot. Seeing Nan Xiaonan appear, the robber in the room instantly put down the things in his hands in horror. He stuck close to the wall and nervously ran to the door. Lady Nan didn't even bother to pay attention to this thief. She just rolled up a handicraft and directly knocked him to the ground. By the way, this person who took advantage of the situation was actually the owner of the small food stall that led Miss Nan here. Who asked you to sell me? With a sneer, Lady Nan casually put Yulia on the chair. Then she came to the bookshelf behind the desk. It was impossible to find the mechanism. She had mastered the ability of Black Soul Body to turn into mist. Why would she find the mechanism? Of course, she had to go through the wall. She smoothly entered the dark room of the study. It was not big, about 10 square meters. There were some communication tools and a large number of surveillance screens, which basically covered the inside and outside of the casino. But among the many screens, only one screen was off, the one in the middle. Nan Xiaonan pondered for a moment, and her body began to slowly vaporize. Since this ability had been unlocked, with the knowledge of this dimensional crack, it would be easy for her to develop more uses for it. After a while, the fog condensed again and turned into the appearance of the agent. At this time, Miss Nan turned on the screen in the middle of the room and waited calmly. However, even though the screen was turned on, it was still dark. You can't contact him? Nan Xiaonan frowned. There was no point in waiting any longer because the fire was about to spread to this place. Of course, she was the one who started the fire. She shook her head and was about to turn and leave. What's the matter? You've already looked for me twice in the same day. Shouldn't you be at the ceremony now? The pitch-black screen reacted. It also seemed to be a dark place, separated by a gauze curtain. Behind the curtain, there was a huge chair. Someone was sitting on the chair, and the sitting posture seemed to be a little casual. But the voice that came through was obviously processed. She could not even tell the gender of the person. In the dim vision and the black gauze curtain, she could barely see a shadow. The real manipulator behind the agent. The real manipulator behind the casino, and many girls behind the scenes. Someone wants to kill me. At this time, Nan Xiaonan pinched her throat and said with a trace of urgency, "It's great that I can finally contact you. Someone wants to kill you?" The person behind the black gauze curtain seemed to be a little suspicious. After a few seconds of silence, he asked, "Who wants to kill you?" "I don't know." The other person is also a sacred ability user. Nan Xiaonan said quickly, "My secretary, you know. She couldn't stop it and has been sacrificed. I can only look for you." "A sacred ability user? Could it be?" The person behind the black curtain muttered. His voice was so soft that Nan Xiaonan could not even hear it clearly. She quietly adjusted the volume of the voice. "What are you doing?" The person suddenly shouted in a deep voice. I can't hear your voice clearly. Maybe the signal is bad." "Okay." Nan Xiaonan subconsciously let out a sigh of relief. She thought to herself that the manipulator behind the scenes was really a careful person. She asked tentatively, "Now what should I do?" "Yes, what should I do?" The person suddenly chuckled. "Look, since someone wants to kill you, and it's a sacred ability user, that means this place has been exposed. Yes, we can only evacuate." Nan Xiaonan nodded. "Is the sacred ability user who wants to kill you still outside?" "Yes, but I'm afraid you will find this place soon." Nan Xiaonan shook her head. I don't want to expose anything about this place, especially in this situation," the person said indifferently. "Nasta, you've worked hard all this time. You are my most loyal servant. I will remember you," the man said indifferently. Nasta? It seemed that was the real name of the agent. However, Nan Xiaonan was suddenly shocked. She exclaimed, "What do you want to do?" The screen suddenly turned dark. At the same time, the rest of the screens lit up in red, and the same set of clear countdown numbers appeared. 20 seconds of countdown time. "You are even more ruthless than me." At this time, Nan Xiaonan only had time to curse. In the next moment, she directly turned into mist and rushed out of the dark room. In the study, she directly rolled up Yulia. She could not pass through walls with Yulia, so she could only run for her life. However, 20 seconds passed in the blink of an eye. A loud sound rang out, followed by violent tremors and terrifying tongues of fire that filled all the corridors. Boom! Bang! 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 Pink fireworks exploded in the air. The sky above the City of Freedom was filled with colorful fog. The streets were still lively at this time. "It's so lively. Why hasn't Boss Asakes come back yet?" Forehead Lily was lying on the counter in the lobby, watching TV in boredom. Missy didn't come out after entering the room, so she didn't want to disturb her. Mr. Bertrand went out earlier, saying that he was going to find the guy who escaped in the morning. Mr. Luo was taken to the meeting place by the mayor's assistant before he entered the door. And Lady Nan was missing since yesterday afternoon. She felt that everyone was very busy, but she couldn't do anything. Forehead Lily sighed. She thought for a while, then took out the notebook that Boss Asakes gave her and opened it again. This was something related to her life, but the notebook was blank and she couldn't find any clues. But after all, this was something related to her life, and it was given to her by Boss Asakes, so she felt at ease to carry it with her. Shaking her head, Forehead Lily casually flipped through a few blank pages, then put the notebook back in her arms again. What should you do now? Or Forehead Lily decided to pray. Since her destiny system was activated, Forehead Lily hadn't completed a formal prayer because too many things had happened in the meantime, and because she didn't have the habit of praying before. In fact, she had already recited the prayer, which was taught to her by Boss Asakes. So, the little maid opened the window next to her, planning to complete the first complete prayer in her life here. But the moment the window was opened, something was thrown in from outside. It was a paper ball. Forehead Lily frowned, subconsciously picked up the paper, opened it, and looked at what was written on the paper ball. This is the expression of the little maid in the mansion suddenly changed. A roaring sound like a beast was coming from the room in front. Through the glass wall for observation, Director Ludic, Levi, and 2 other elderly doctors were frowning at this scene. On the hospital bed, the uncontrollable fellow with burns all over his body was still struggling fiercely, even though he was bound by the restraints. "Mr. Ludic, we have already used a large dose of sedative, but it didn't have any effect. If we continue to use it, I'm afraid his heart won't be able to bear it," one of the doctors said quickly with a serious face. I don't think it's a problem of whether his heart can bear it or not. It's a problem that I don't understand at all. The director shook his head. The electrocardiogram of this seriously injured person was beating crazily. It was always like this before the sedative was used. Yeah, I've never seen such a case. Mr. Ludick, how did this person get injured? I don't know. He was fished up from the sewer. The director shrugged and asked abruptly, since the medicine didn't work, do you want to try physical attacks? Mr. Ludick, this is a patient. How can we treat a patient like that? The doctors angrily accused. It's just a joke to ease the atmosphere. The director shrugged and then said abruptly, open the door. Let me in. I want to see this guy at a close distance. It's too dangerous. He may have some bacteria on him. It's hard to say. The doctors didn't seem to agree. However, the principal had already walked in without even putting on his protective suit. Mr. Ludick, you can't just go in like this. The doctors hurriedly stopped him, but Laval had already reached out and blocked the two doctors. Don't worry, he won't die. But if you want to go in, I can't guarantee it. The young man's eyes were a little cold, and the two doctors subconsciously shrank their necks. At this moment, Ludick director had already come to the bedside of the seriously injured person. He stared at the injured person's bloodshot eyes and suddenly sighed. The principal slowly pulled up his sleeves and frowned. He seemed to be hesitant, but in the end, he still extended his wrist and muttered, just a little. Really, it's not good to use too much force, bro. I'm very afraid of pain. The seriously injured person on the bed, under the violent and out of control, crazily bit the director's wrist of Ludick director. The director's eyebrows tightened, but he didn't say anything. His wrist had been bitten, and blood began to drip down, slowly flowing into the mouth of the seriously injured person. At this moment, the director suddenly pulled his wrist back, as if he didn't want to wait for another second. But the wound on his wrist that was supposed to be bitten had already disappeared except for some marks. The director wiped the blood on his wrist and put it into his trouser pocket. The seriously injured person on the bed had already calmed down a lot, and after a while, he became completely quiet. His condition is getting better. What did you do when you fell down? The doctors outside couldn't help but ask in astonishment. The director turned around, putting his palms together like a charlatan, and said compassionately, I was just praying for this poor guy. It must be the sage who heard my voice, so he gave me a miracle. Ah, sage, I praise you. Bullsh asterisk T. Didn't the sage already die? The doctors wouldn't believe it. If Ludick wasn't the biggest director of this hospital, they wouldn't believe it. The director quickly walked out of the observation room and took Levi to the corridor outside. Levi, stay here and take care of this injured guy. Also, wait for the report of the corpses from Essex. I'm going to the ceremony venue. Let me know if there's any news. I understand. I'm really looking forward to the finals tonight. The principal suddenly stretched and opened the window in the corridor. Today, the wind in the Freedom City is a bit sticky. It doesn't seem very refreshing. That's because you're sweating. Holy Maiden's ceremony venue. Mr. Luo, please come in. The male assistant stood in front of the door and opened the door for Boss Luo and made a gesture to invite him in. The room inside was actually a dressing room and a lounge for the judges of the competition. As for the Holy Maidens, there was another dressing room and a lounge. There were already several people in the lounge. Obviously, they were the judges of the finals tonight. Boss Luo saw Isabel, who was wearing a white men's suit, at Miss Assman's clothing store. Today, she wore a more conservative evening gown. That's Ms. Isabel, the teacher of the Holy Rites class in Freedom City Academy. She's also an authority in this field. The male assistant led Boss Luo to his seat and introduced the judges in a low voice. The one next to her is Mr. Nasta. He's the head of the famous Purcell School in Freedom City, one of the famous scholars. Boss Luo followed the male assistant's gaze and saw the man sitting in front of the dressing table. The man seemed to feel the gaze and looked over as well. Then, he showed a polite smile and nodded. Boss Luo had already sat down, and he asked curiously, won't the managers of the 7 capitals be the judges this time? They won't. The male assistant respectfully replied, but the city lord and other managers will be the guests of honor. At this moment, the head of the Purcell School, Mr. Nasta suddenly stood up, even scaring the makeup artist next to him. Looking at the shocked gazes of the crowd, Mr. Norsta sighed and said calmly, "Excuse me, I need to go to the bathroom." Oh, okay. The male assistant quickly nodded. "Mr. Nasta, I'll take you there." "No need, I know where it is." After saying that, Norton walked out of the restroom. He seemed to be in a hurry. Chapter 21:36. Seeing the Purcell School's sect master leave in a hurry, Lady Isabel, who was not far away, said in a joking tone, "That guy Nasta is still the same as before. Even small matters can make him nervous." The makeup artist beside her did not dare to continue the topic. She only dared to carefully put on makeup for Ms. Isabel her eyes. However, Ms. Isabel waved her hand casually. "No need. I'm not the weird president of the City of Dawn. It's almost done. You can leave now." The makeup artist still did not dare to continue the topic and nodded lightly. "Okay, Ms. Isabel. If you need anything, just let me know." Ms. Isabel stood up at this time. She looked around a backstage lounge, and a smile appeared on her face. She walked to Boss Luo's place in another position. "We've met before in Asman's shop. Do you still remember?" She sat on the table in front of Boss Luo and tilted her head slightly. Her straight hair hung down, and on the other side was a very eye-catching earring. Her red lips were the color of flames, and her lip lines seemed to be alive. There was also the smell of perfume. The woman's thighs were even exposed through the gap of her skirt, smooth and flawless. This was a mature body with a body that could make men restless. The male assistant of the City Lord of Durand was beside him. He had to endure a lot of pressure and tried his best not to look at Ms. Isabel. The reason why he was still here was because the City Lord of Durand had ordered him to be polite to Mr. Luo, who was invited from Rose Mansion, and try his best to satisfy the other party's requests. This was a privilege that the other judges did not have. Although he did not know why the City Lord would treat this young man so well, since it was the City Lord's order, he would just follow it. However, this Mr. Luo seemed to know Ms. Isabel. Isabel's identity to the outside world was the sacred ritual instructor of the City of Freedom Academy. However, everyone in the core circle of the Freedom City knew Isabel's identity. She was Ludwig's cousin and the true heir of the Mother of Saints family. Unlike the descendant of the Father of the Saints, Arthaces, who was getting worse and worse, the Mother of the Saints had a much bigger family. After so many years of development in the Freedom City, the Mother of the Saints family had already infiltrated into various industries. I remember. Boss Luo looked at himself in the mirror and smiled. "Ms. Isabel, you're so beautiful. It's hard to forget. I like honest guys." Isabel lowered her body a little, and almost half of her body was exposed through the collar of her gown. She was so close to Boss Luo's ear that she whispered, "Especially good-looking guys." At this time, Boss Luo casually turned his head to the other side and looked at the City Lord's male assistant. "Is my makeup artist not here yet?" "He should be here soon. I'll go take a look." The male assistant braced himself and quickly walked out. He knew that Mr. Luo purposely used him, but the problem was that he didn't want to make Ms. Isabel unhappy. He even saw Ms. Isabel's warning gaze. The male assistant could only pray in his heart that the young man from Rose Mansion could deal with Miss Isabel, who was a big trouble. But didn't they say that Isabel wasn't interested in adults? "Very few people will reject me." "Why?" Boss Luo blinked and asked curiously. "Maybe because I have something that they want but don't dare to say." Isabel chuckled. "For example, some things are not prohibited in the holy rules, but are not allowed either. Some things that are on the edge of the holy rules." Isabel. Boss Luo suddenly called this name softly. Isabel stroked her hair and chuckled. "Has any woman ever told you that when you call her name, it will make her heart flutter?" Boss Luo acted as if he didn't hear it. "This name, if I remember correctly, is also the name of the Mother of Saints." Isabel shrugged and said indifferently, "It is indeed the same name. Before I was born, it was casually decided by my parents." "You don't like this name?" "I don't like things that I can't decide," Isabel said calmly. Isabel said calmly, "But the truth is, no matter how much you dislike it, There are always some things that you don't have the ability to change. You can only accept it passively. For example, the name your parents gave you, or the body they gave you. Perhaps they decided on this name for you to take away some special expectations. Isabel said mockingly, "Expectations are not my expectations, but they're expectations for this name itself. Don't you think it's boring?" The mother of saints married with the ancestor of the dark family to give birth to this saint. In fact, she doesn't have much of a blood relationship with our family. Probably it's just a title, but some people are willing to accept it. But Miss Isabel, you enjoy everything that these people brought you. That's why I said that even if you don't like it, you can only accept it passively. Isabel narrowed her eyes and said, "Of course, I'm not a pretentious person. I enjoy the things that they arrange for me, so naturally I will respond to what they want. Besides, I don't have a reason to reject these things. Who doesn't like to be treated well?" Miss Isabel. Boss Luo suddenly looked into Miss Isabel's eyes and said softly, "In this beautiful and moving body, there is a soul that is indulgent. Can you see my soul?" Isabel imitated him and blinked her eyes, looking very curious. Basically, Boss Luo nodded affirmatively. She was startled, then immediately laughed. "I heard that souls have colors. Then, tell me, what color is my soul?" "It's not very bright, but it's not dim either." Boss Luo said seriously, "It's white, but it's very firm. I'm quite satisfied with this firm feeling." "Why is it white?" Isabel was even more curious. Boss Luo smiled casually. "Black always gives people a mysterious feeling." "Say it again. I don't give people a mysterious feeling." "Little friend, you won't be able to coax a woman into your bed like this." Isabel shook her head, then lightly bit her lips and looked at him seductively. "But if it's the sofa, it shouldn't be a problem." Right at this moment, the door to the backstage lounge opened again, but the person who entered was not Mayor Duran's assistant, but Ludic. Today's Principal Ludic wore a very flirtatious pink suit, and he had a very bright smile on his face. "The troublesome guy is here," Miss Isabel suddenly whispered in Boss Luo's ear. Then, she directly left Boss Luo's seat and said in a lazy voice, "Makeup artist, help me touch up my makeup and give me an eye massage. There are some people I don't want to see." As if he did not hear Isabel's high-profile words, Principal Ludic walked straight to Boss Luo. "When Asakes told me, I still didn't believe it." Ludic looked at Boss Luo in surprise, as if he was looking at a rare animal in the zoo. "Durand really invited you to be a judge. I smell a scent of fraud." Boss Luo felt that it was interesting. "Why is it fraud?" "I heard that one of the candidates for the Holy Maiden ceremony is Durand's niece. The administrators of the 7 capitals can't participate, so I suspect that you have been bribed by Durand to help his niece cheat," Principal Ludic said seriously. "So, why did Durand invite you?" Strictly speaking, Principal Ludic and Boss Luo did not have a formal conversation. When they were in Dong Remy village, Ludic was basically lying down. However, whether it was Ludic or Isabel, the members of this family seemed to like to chat up. "Maybe it's because I don't belong to Freedom City," Boss Luo said. Ludic pondered and nodded. "You don't belong to Freedom City, and you don't belong to anyone. It seems that you are the one with the most freedom." Boss Luo did not know if Principal Ludic had misunderstood something, but he did not intend to explain. "Where is Mr. Laval?" "He has something to do, so he can't come for now," Principal Ludic said casually. The principal said casually. Then, he bent down slightly and whispered, "I'm talking to you right now. My cousin will probably find a chance to find out what I said to you later." "Then how should I answer Ms. Isabel?" "Just say that I didn't say anything." Principal Ludic blinked his eyes slyly. "In fact, I really didn't say anything, and you didn't lie, right?" "That's true." Boss Luo smiled. "Mr. Ludic, your family members have a very special way of getting along." The principal chuckled softly. "I heard that this cousin of mine is very good. If you have the chance, you should try it. Also, she has a lot of collections. Maybe you can even get a big gift bag. It's very cost-effective." He looked like a pimp, a man full of bad ideas. Boss Luo just shook his head slightly. Principal Ludic did not mind. He knocked on the dressing table lightly. "See you later." "See you later, Mr. Ludic." More and more judges came in. It was said that there were a total of 10 judges this time. Basically, they were all famous people in Freedom City. Teacher, Calvin, a barefoot old man in plain clothes, slowly walked into the backstage lounge. Seeing this, Ludic, who was dressed in pink, immediately stood up and went forward to greet him. Teacher, I didn't expect you to come. Ludic was quite surprised. You were invited to the previous ceremonies, but you always declined. Why did you come this time? This old man was one of the famous scholars in Freedom City. Because he was an ascetic, he had always been respected. Even before Saint Fall, the saint would treat him with respect. Everyone in the resting area came forward to greet the ascetic cultivator. Scholar Calvin waved his hand and said with a serious expression, I'm here to witness. Witness? Ludic was startled, but he did not ask what he meant. Scholar Calvin found an empty seat and sat down. After sitting down, he closed his eyes. He had always been like this, with a strange temperament. However, the saint of the Freedom City once said in private that this Calvin scholar was pure to the point that it made people respect him. He was just sitting there and doing nothing, but he was already giving off a feeling of awe and veneration. By the way, did Mr. Northstar go out for a long time and not come back yet? Maybe his stomach is really not feeling well. People were talking. Boss Luo casually walked out of the lounge. No one paid attention to him, as if he was just an inconspicuous object in the room. Dahlia, I'm going in. This is the ticket I got for you. Don't lose it. It took me a lot of effort to get it back. There was a sea of people at the entrance. People who chased after celebrities were squeezed here, wanting to see the Saintess candidates up close. Okay. The young man took the ticket and put it away quietly. Dahlia, why are you carrying such a big backpack? What's in it? The girl suddenly asked. Nothing. Just some food, the young man said casually. Food. The girl's face was full of suspicion. However, her mentor was urging her, so she hurriedly said, I'm going in. Dahlia, take care of yourself. You too. He watched as the girl ran toward the entrance. He was gradually drowned by the sea of people. Ring. It was the sound of the bell on the bicycle. The bicycle stopped at the corner of the hall. Sister Celian looked up at the huge ceiling of the hall and suddenly felt dizzy. Sure enough, I'm still not used to this kind of environment. Sister Celian exhaled slowly and then took a deep breath. She pushed the bicycle into the hall. The other Saintess candidates entered the hall on festoon cars. She was probably the poorest one. Today I have to do my best. Sister Celian encouraged herself silently. In front of the bus stop of the hall, a maid from the mansion walked with the crowd nervously. Boss Arthaces, please don't let anything happen to you. She was thinking about something. The girl walked slowly in the corridor of the hall. She was wearing a pair of delicate glass shoes. This kind of shoes should affect her walking, but she didn't look like she was having any trouble walking. Why are you still here? Suddenly, a man in the venue's uniform called out to the girl from behind. The young girl turned around with a hint of panic. The man in uniform quickly walked forward. Don't just stand there. Hurry up and put on your makeup. The final rehearsal is about to begin. What's your name again? The girl saw that the staff member was looking at the name list in his hand. She knew that her name was not on the list. Oh, I found it. Asman. The staff member suddenly nodded. All right, Miss Asman. Follow me. I will take you there. After putting on the glass shoes, she not only became younger, she even appeared here. Her name was on the name list. The girl couldn't help but open her mouth slightly. Is this magic? Chapter 21:37. The curtain wall of the skyscraper was also a huge projection screen. On the screen, the PV of the Holy Maiden ritual was flashing quickly. People were immersed in this beautiful PV, and the entire city of Freedom was full of expectations. It's about to start. The Holy Maiden Ritual. On the rooftop of the skyscraper, Mr. Bertrand of the Dong Remy village retracted his gaze from the screen. He looked down at the street below as if he was looking for something. He was looking for Jiaho, who had hibernated outside the mansion and then slipped away. Although he was only a part of the real Holy Angel Bertrand in the Dong Remy village, there was a huge gap between him and the real Holy Angel Bertrand. But after all, he was one of the commanders of the Wings of Freedom, one of the top 3 armies in the kingdom of heaven. This small part of him was actually not weak. In a subworld with a lower upper limit, he was at the level of a powerful creature at the pinnacle. Then, to be able to slip away from his hands, even if he wasn't strong, he must be extraordinary in some way. But this shouldn't be, because in the kingdom of holy light, there shouldn't be supernatural powers. The existence of miracles could be allowed, but it must be the domain of the supreme beings. It was used to strengthen the faith of the people in the kingdom of holy light. But before President Balaam's head of bodyguards, Fash, committed suicide, he said something like divine ability user. Could it be that the kingdom of holy light had unknowingly sprouted supernatural powers? And this sprouted supernatural power even hid from the supreme beings of the 7 capitals? But the creation of the destiny system was mostly facilitated by the Saintess. As the commander of the Wings of Freedom, although Holy Angel Bertrand didn't have the ability to participate in this plan, he still knew some internal inquiries. The creators of the destiny system and the supreme beings of the 7 capitals had absolute monitoring authority over the kingdom of holy light. With such authority, how could they not discover the sprouted supernatural powers in the kingdom of holy light? Logically speaking, this sprouted supernatural power should have been nipped in the cradle early. Can I assume that only the supreme beings of the same level can hide from the supreme beings? Or Bertrand of the Dong Remy village narrowed his eyes, or another creator of the destiny system? At this moment, he was even alarmed by this thought. This is not an easy task. Bertrand from Don Remy village couldn't help but smile bitterly. The Saintess also looks like she can't move when she sees the son-in-law. Huh, you've finally shown your tail, you slippery fellow. Bertrand's purpose for coming out was very clear, which was to search for the guy who had slipped away. And at this moment, under the continuous search, he finally sensed some abnormalities. It was that strange fluctuation. Before the guy who had slipped away disappeared, there was a faint but extremely strange fluctuation in the surroundings. Over there, Mr. Bertrand's eyes were like torches, and his body turned into a stream of light. Under the sunlight, it was almost impossible to detect him. His speed was one of the best even in the Wings of Liberty. Their destination was a building under construction. Mr. Bertrand from Don Remy village walked on the rough floors, getting closer and closer to the source of the strange energy fluctuation. The fluctuation became more and more intense, and it even formed a whirlpool in front of his eyes. The twisted whirlpool was like an eye in the abyss, and a figure was looming in it. Bertrand chuckled and waved his hand. A cross sword condensed from holy light immediately appeared in his hand. This time, I won't let you off so easily. Not bad. The whirlpool dissipated, and what appeared was a guy whose brain was exposed. In fact, it wasn't really an exposed brain. It was just that this guy's cerebral cortex seemed to be extremely developed and bulged like muscles. It was half squatting at this moment, and its arms were much longer than ordinary people's, almost reaching the ground. Its tongue was also longer than ordinary people's, like a lizard's tongue, and it was wearing a jacket full of nails. It looked like a frog. Annoying light. A sharp voice came from this guy with an abnormally developed brain. Its head suddenly tilted. Annoying guy. In fact, Mr. Bertrand was never afraid of boasting. Although I'm not the type that everyone loves, when it comes to popularity, I'm probably a hair's breadth ahead of you. Rip. The weird man instantly made an even more harsh sound. It gathered strength on its knees and directly jumped at Mr. Bertrand at a very fast speed. In the process of jumping, the weird frog-like guy suddenly disappeared out of thin air. Bertrand frowned subconsciously. At this moment, a fierce, murderous intent came from behind his head. The weird frog-like guy that disappeared appeared again behind Bertrand. He didn't seem to notice it. The frog-like guy's tongue instantly wrapped around Bertrand's neck at this moment. But the cross of holy light suddenly flashed. On the ground, half of the twitching tongue was already curled up. The weird frog-like guy covered its mouth in pain, and a large amount of blood gushed out from its fingers. That's it. Bertrand waved the cross of holy light in his hand casually, and the bloodstains on the cross sword instantly evaporated and disappeared. It's an ability similar to space travel. Although this kind of ability is relatively rare, it's still too slow. The weird frog-like guy cursed in a low voice. It was a language that was different from any city in the 7 capitals. The space behind it was quickly twisting at this moment. Bertrand sneered and turned into a stream of light. Before the vortex behind the frog-like guy was completely formed, he had already arrived in front of the frog-like guy. He directly grabbed the frog-like guy's head with his palm and then pressed it to the ground without saying anything. Bang! The ground cracked, and the frog-like guy's entire head was almost buried in the concrete slab. Mr. Bertrand's holy light cross sword instantly turned and nailed into the frog-like guy's palm directly. The frog-like guy's eyes were chaotic at this moment, and the violent look on his face became more and more intense. His eyeballs were like a chameleon, crazily rolling around, and the cursing sound in the strange language became more and more harsh. Mr. Bertrand stood up, picked his ears, and shook his head. I actually let a guy like you escape. It seems that I've been too comfortable recently. He shrugged. He wouldn't kill the frog-like guy, but he would bring him back to the Saintess. Although the Saintess might not care, he still had to do what he had to do. She was the Saintess of the Wings of Liberty, and it didn't matter whether she was the so-called Saint of the Kingdom of Heaven or not. You'd better be quiet, frog brother. My lord doesn't like noisy guys. Mr. Bertrand twirled his fingers, and the sharp holy light cross sword instantly turned into a soft rope, completely tying up the frogman's body. He then bent down, grabbed the frogman by the back of his collar, and planned to drag him away. But at this moment, Bertrand frowned subconsciously. He subconsciously looked around, and then casually threw the frog-like guy in his hand to the ground. It seems that this is not all you've got. As he spoke, in the empty floor of the building under construction, twisted vortexes appeared one after another. They stepped around Mr. Bertrand. After a quick count, there were as many as 17 vortexes. Similar figures were hidden in these twisted vortexes. Then frog-like guys walked out of these vortexes. They almost looked the same, but there were slight differences in height and physique. So there's more than one. Bertrand's eyes narrowed slightly. So, you're not scolding me, but calling for your companions. The weird frog-like guys gradually approached and surrounded Bertrand. Mr. Bertrand of the Dong Remy village loosened his neck and waved his hands. He held the holy light cross sword in both hands. There's no need for too many of them. One is enough. The more, the better. Bertrand chuckled, but the dozen or so frogmen began to disappear one by one. This trick again. Oh, it's slightly different. Bertrand looked around. He was confident enough to kill the frog-like guys the moment they appeared. But unexpectedly, these guys didn't appear again after they disappeared. Bertrand frowned and suddenly looked at his feet. Are they down there? He snorted coldly and stomped his feet. A large piece of slate was broken directly. The moment he fell, a strong shock wave condensed on the cross sword in both hands. But the place where Bertrand fell turned out to be a huge twisted vortex. The moment Bertrand saw the vortex, he instantly turned into a stream of light. However, at this moment, a huge shadow-like arm suddenly stretched out from the huge twisted vortex and grabbed his body at a faster speed. The moment his body was grabbed, a strange and cold force instantly eroded the holy light power in his body. No, they were fated enemies. They didn't erode each other, but directly melted each other. However, the Shadow's arm was obviously more than Bertrand's at this moment. He was shocked, but his body had been directly pulled into the huge vortex by the arm. He couldn't struggle. In the end, Bertrand was completely lost in the vortex. The vortex gradually shrank. One by one, frog-like guys slowly appeared at this moment. They quickly carried their injured companions and then jumped directly into the vortex. The building under construction returned to its peaceful state again, except for a big hole in one of the floors. Bertrand, what happened? In the Holy Maiden ceremony in the Freedom City, 2 young men wearing the uniforms of the security guards were discussing something in the corridor. My doppelganger's aura disappeared. The person who was asked the question muttered at this moment. Doppelganger? The other young man frowned. When did you get a doppelganger? Does the saintess know about it? Holy Angel Bertrand shook his head at this moment. I didn't tell the saintess that I sent him to the free city to verify the original rumor. However, for a long time, the connection between us was cut off. Then, he suddenly appeared in the past 2 days, but he didn't take the initiative to find me. Saint Angel Bertrand shook his head. Of course, it's also because I took the initiative to hide all of my aura. After all, we, the 10 Saint Angels, can't be sensed by the supreme beings of the 7 capitals. We have to be extremely careful. Then why did he suddenly disappear? His companion asked suspiciously. Saint Angel Bertrand shook his head. He might have encountered some danger. In this case, he won't expose his relationship with me, which will make the entire Freedom Wings army the target. His companion's face became more and more serious, and he suddenly said coldly, Bertrand, do you think the plan that the saintess made before, Holy Fall, will go smoothly? It will definitely succeed. Saint Angel Bertrand didn't have any doubts on his face. I still think it's too crazy. It's Holy Fall. His companion smiled bitterly. What if the supreme beings of the 7 capitals don't want to activate the Resurrection Day? Then, it's not like you don't know what kind of person our saintess is. Saint Angel Bertrand shrugged. She calmly does the craziest things in a row. If not for this, she wouldn't be our saintess. That's true. His companion nodded, and then murderous intent gradually appeared in his eyes. Now, let's just wait for Archangel Saint John to be shocked. There's someone here. At this time, a girl was walking in the passage leading to the inside of the venue with a somewhat cautious expression. Saint Angel Bertrand frowned, but his companion said, You go and see what's going on. I'll go and see how the others are doing. Keep in touch. Saint Angel Bertrand nodded, and then he walked directly to the nervous girl. Who are you? Unauthorized people are not allowed to enter here. I'm here to participate in the ceremony. The girl lowered her head and said with a trace of panic, But I don't seem to find a way. You're here to participate in the ceremony? Saint Angel Bertrand frowned. What's your name? Daphne. The girl's voice was lower, and there was even a trace of uneasiness. Saint Angel Bertrand frowned again. He clicked on the tablet in his hand and clicked on the waiting list. There was indeed a name called Daphne on the list, and there was even a photo. Saint Angel Bertrand looked at the nervous girl in front of him and said coldly, You're really here to participate in the Holy Maiden ceremony, but you're not. This is my pass. The girl quickly handed out a card at this time. This is... Saint Angel Bertrand couldn't help but be stunned. Lady Isabel's family emblem? But why are you... This is nonsense. Nonsense. The girl didn't dare to look up at this time. Her body was even trembling slightly. There was only one thought in her mind. Am I discovered? What should I do? Escape? However, Saint Angel Bertrand seemed to have thought of something at this time. He changed the topic and said, Forget it. Since you have a pass, then follow me in. They have already started the final rehearsal. Hurry up. The girl couldn't help but be stunned. She saw the security guard in front of her looking at her with an unfriendly expression and said fiercely, Hurry up. Is she really a woman? Am I discovered or not? The girl couldn't figure it out at all, seeing that the security guard had already walked in front of her impatiently. The girl gritted her teeth and had to bite the bullet and follow him. But Lady Isabel, as far as the girl knew, Teacher Isabel was not married yet. How did she become a wife? Chapter 21:38. Bertrand woke up in a desolate temple. What was strange was that the gigantic shadow hand was still holding onto his body, but the end of the arm had appeared out of thin air. He struggled for a while, but found that he couldn't exert any strength. The shadowy palm was constantly absorbing the strength he exerted. Mr. Bertrand stood up reluctantly and looked around the desolate temple. In the darkness, pairs of violent eyes were looking at him. They were the weird frog-like eyes. Had he been dragged into the lair of this group of people? How many of these guys are there? They didn't feel like they were born naturally. They were more like man-made monsters. Mr. Bertrand couldn't help but frown. He seemed to have seen something similar somewhere before. It wasn't exactly the same, but it felt similar. How can the style of this temple be? At this moment, a thick black fog gushed out from the ground of the temple. The black fog gathered in front of Bertrand as if it was about to form something. After a while, a figure appeared in front of Bertrand's eyes. It was a figure floating in the black fog. It was the figure of a woman. She slowly turned around. Countless frogmen knelt on the ground and raised their hands as if they were worshipping her. A large number of voices overlapped and turned into a huge sound wave. Under this huge sound wave, Bertrand even had a splitting headache. He even knelt on the ground in pain. He finally saw the appearance of the woman in the black fog clearly. In an instant, a look of disbelief appeared on Bertrand's face. It's you. Morgan, this is impossible. Didn't you already? It seems that my little fellows have brought me a good guest. You didn't die, and you even lurked in the Holy Light Kingdom. Mr. Bertrand's face changed greatly, and he was about to say something. But the woman in the black fog put her finger on her lips and signaled him to be quiet. Then she smiled faintly. Lurk? Angel. Back then, didn't the kingdom of heaven insist that I reincarnate here? I just woke up by chance. You are the holy angel of Bertrand. She slowly walked out of the black fog, her blood-red hair fluttering in the wind. I remember your name now, Angel. In an instant, Bertrand seemed to have a flash of inspiration in his mind. He could not help but blurt out, You're the one behind all of this? Why? The red-haired woman chuckled. Why? We just want to destroy that woman's freedom city, just like how you destroyed our god kingdom and our god system. Damn it, I won't let you get what you want. Bertrand instantly gritted his teeth, and a dazzling radiance suddenly burst out from his body. The flame-like radiance burned the shadow palms on his body. You're not good enough. The woman with long red hair waved her hand, and the black palm instantly extinguished the light on Mr. Bertrand's body. Why didn't you kill me? How can that be? We're missing some witnesses. The red-haired woman said indifferently. Just like how you made me watch everything get destroyed, I should at least do the same. Only then can I repay you. With that said, a black cold air climbed up from under Mr. Bertrand's feet. The cold air quickly covered Bertrand, then condensed and finally sealed him in dark gray ice. In the ice prison, Bertrand still had a panicked expression on his face. The red-haired woman slowly raised her head and looked at the dim clouds in the sky. This was a place outside the 7 capitals. It was a sinful place with eternal darkness and no light. A large number of sinners who were struggling to survive were exiled here. Now, it's up to you, Lily. Rumble dash. Above the desolate temple, crazy lightning flashed chaotically in the air. It's here. Go in. Hearing the cold voice of a security guard, the girl named Daphne nodded nervously. She slowly opened the door and walked into the next corridor. She looked back and saw that the young security guard, who didn't even tell her his name, had already left. She could only see his back. Daphne slowly exhaled. She hoped that tonight she could fulfill the wish of teacher Isabel. However, she felt that she had been discovered. The security guard looked at her as if he had seen through her identity. I won't be taken away and sent to the stake, right? Something like a holy maiden ceremony. Daphne couldn't help but smile bitterly. She walked alone in the empty corridor. She still felt a little nervous. She had a habit of hiding in the washroom when she was too nervous. She always felt that a narrow space was good for calming down. This is for boys. Suddenly, a soft voice sounded beside Daphne. Daphne froze and looked up subconsciously. She saw a young man with black hair and black eyes. She couldn't help but open her mouth subconsciously. It's Luo. Sorry, I was mistaken. Do you know me? The young man with black hair asked with a smile. So sorry. I mistook you for someone else. Daphne quickly shook her head and rushed into the female washroom on the other side. Boss Luo glanced at girl, as panicked back and chuckled. Then, he casually walked into the male washroom on the other side. In the washroom, a man was standing in front of the mirror. His hair was wet, and there were many water stains on his face. It was obvious that he had just washed his face. However, he seemed to be in a daze and couldn't focus his eyes, as if he was afraid of something. Even if someone walked in, he didn't notice. Mr. Norsta? Boss Luo called out softly. This startled the man, and he turned his head abruptly. What's the matter? You are? Oh, right, you're the one just now. He remembered that this was the young judge brought in by Duran's assistant. However, he knew almost all the famous people in Freedom City. The appearance of such a young and unfamiliar judge would shock not only him, but also everyone else. Mr. Norsta, are you okay? Boss Luo asked curiously. You have been out for a while. Are you not feeling well? Maybe I can call the staff for you. No. Norsta quickly shook his head. I'm fine. I have to go out. Thank you for your kindness. He hurriedly walked out of Boss Luo's side without saying anything. Boss Luo didn't mind and continued walking into the washroom. The window at the end of the washroom was open. Boss Luo walked to the window and looked into the distance. Somewhere far away, there was a thick cloud of smoke rising into the air. It wasn't the smoke from the paintballs released during the conference. Instead, it was more like the scene of a fire. However, it was indeed very far from the venue. It was almost at the edge of Freedom City. That Mr. Norsta must have been standing here and looking outside just now. Boss Luo stood there thoughtfully for a while and then left the washroom. When he left, he took out a under repair sign from the tool room and hung it in front of the female washroom. How about taking a walk over there? Boss Luo looked at the other side of the corridor and smiled. That was the direction where the girl, Daphne, came from. Lowering the brim of the security guard's hat, Saint Angel Bertrand slowly walked through the corridor. In front of a room in the corridor, several guards were standing upright at this time. When Bertrand walked over, the eyes of several guards were locked on him almost at the same time. Bertrand nodded at the guards. After showing a kind smile, he continued to walk forward. It wasn't until he completely left that the guards withdrew their gazes. This room was where the managers of the 7 capitals gathered, and it was heavily guarded. After leaving the corridor on this floor, Bertrand quickly entered the back stairs of the safety door. There were 5 guys in security uniforms standing in the corridor of the fire stairs. The Holy Angels. There were a total of 10 Holy Angels in the Freedom City, and they had all entered the conference venue. Including Bertrand, 6 of the Holy Angels had turned into security guards, and the other 4 entered with other identities. There are guards outside the door of the managers of the 7 capitals, so it's not easy to get in. Bertrand said directly, so far, we haven't gotten the news that the Supreme of the 7 capitals, especially that Archangel St. John, will arrive at the banquet. It seems that tonight's operation will be on standby. Even if he doesn't show up tonight, he will show up tomorrow morning. Otherwise, how can the managers of the 7 capitals be qualified to host the Resurrection Day? One of the Saint Angels said disapprovingly. By the way, I just found out something. Bertrand suddenly said, a man has sneaked in among the candidates for the position of Saintess. Is there such a thing? The Saint Angels widened their eyes, and one of them said with a strange expression, I know that many dirty guys in the next generation of churches have this hobby. But this is the Freedom City, right? Maybe it's because this is the Freedom City? Another Saint Angel said casually, our Saintess also said that if they are cute enough, they can be boys as long as they are castrated. The main point is the additional condition. Is he still a boy if he is castrated? Are you going to question our Saintess? Anyway, in the evil old society, all the boys who sang hymns were like this. I don't want to be hung up. The Holy Angels immediately began to discuss among themselves. Okay. Bertrand rolled his eyes. Don't make jokes at this time. Go back to your posts and pay attention to the situation. As for the boy who sneaked in, don't worry about him for the time being. Maybe he can create some chaos for us when necessary. You let him in because of this, right? This guy is full of evil tricks. Saint Angel Bertrand raised his middle finger and glared at the Saint Angels. Get to work. Wait, someone is here. Suddenly, one of the Saint Angels who was opening the fire door tensed up, and he quickly glanced back at the Saint Angels. The Saint Angels, including Saint Angel Bertrand, narrowed their eyes, and Bertrand waved his hand. Of the 4 holy angels, 2 went upstairs, 2 went downstairs, and the last one hid outside the door. Bertrand nodded at this moment, then suddenly pressed his hand on the taser on his waist. The fire door slowly opened, and the moment it opened, Bertrand took out the electric baton and was about to smash it down. At this moment, a young man with black hair and black eyes appeared in the sight of the Saint Angels as the door opened. The electric baton flew toward the young man's head. The young man with black hair and black eyes couldn't help but blink. At this moment, Saint Angel Bertrand had an inexplicable reaction as if something terrible would happen to him if this baton hit the young man. The sudden palpitations in his heart made Bertram stop the electric baton from falling. The baton stopped halfway above the black-haired young man's head, about half a palm's distance away. "Excuse me?" The young man with black hair showed a puzzled look at this time. "What are you doing?" The Saint Angels also cast a puzzled look at Bertrand's sudden stop. "Saint Angel Bertrand, how the F***CK do I know why I stopped?" "Mosquitoes." Saint Angel Bertrand took a deep breath and said, "There are mosquitoes here. I'm killing mosquitoes. Yes, mosquitoes." With that said, Saint Angel Bertrand continued to wave the electric baton a few more times, as if he was trying to kill mosquitoes. "Yes, there are a lot of mosquitoes here." At this time, the holy angels took out their stun batons and started waving them in the back corridor. So many people killing mosquitoes in the back corridor? The young man with black hair smiled in amazement at this time. "You're really responsible, everyone." "Huh. Ah. Saint Angel Bertrand smiled embarrassedly. "By the way, who are you? You can't just come in here." With that said, Saint Angel Bertrand's eyes focused again. The Saint Angels also cast their gazes at the young man with black hair and secretly clenched the electric batons in their hands. "I'm lost." The young man with black hair apologized. "I came here while walking and happened to see you." "Oh, yes, I'm a judge of the party." "Judge?" "Yes." The young man with black hair nodded, then pointed to a certificate worn on his chest. "This is the judge's certificate issued to all judges." Bertrand glanced at it. Although he muttered in his heart, the judge's certificate was indeed real. "Oh, you're a judge." Bertrand looked back at the crowd at this time, then looked at the young man with black hair and said, "The judges have a special restroom. I'll take you there. This way, please." "Thank you, Mr. Bertrand." The young man with black hair nodded with a smile. In an instant, Saint Angel Bertrand's eyes became fierce again. He even narrowed his eyes and lowered his voice. "How do you know my name?" Glancing at the electric baton that was clenched again, the young man with black hair smiled slightly and said, "Isn't it written on the worker certificate? Your name." Bertrand subconsciously turned his head to look. First of all, he didn't remember when he brought a worker certificate. The name Bertrand was indeed written on the certificate, which made him feel like he was in a fantasy. "Don't alert the enemy." Saint Angel Bertrand glanced at his companions again, then took a light breath and opened the door. "This way, please." ######## PS1. Thank you, GML, Blue Eucalyptus 2015, for serving tea to the capitalist big boss Go Yak. PS2. 0/2 PS3. As usual. Chapter 2139. In the corridor, Saint Angel Bertrand led the way. He was always paying attention to the black-haired young man behind him. What's his name again? I've seen this guy's judge ID just now, and I should have seen his name, but why? Why can't I remember? I know. No, what? Saint Angel Bertrand stopped subconsciously. He turned around calmly and looked at the black-haired young man. The black-haired young man smiled and said, "Mr. Bertrand, what you guys did the back stairs." "Oh." Bertrand got closer and chuckled. "What do you know?" The black-haired young man said casually, "Mr. Bertrand, you must be hiding there to rest, smoke or something, right?" "Ha ha ha. It's fine to say that we're slacking off. We're just addicted to smoking, and it's not a good place to work. So, Saint Angel Bertrand waved his hand at this time. "We're all boorish people, so we don't need to be so particular, Mr. Judge." He looked at the black-haired young man's judge ID again, but the ID was inserted into his chest pocket at this time. The black-haired young man took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket at this time and said with a smile, "Mr. Bertrand, give me one. I'm a judge. If you're with me, it shouldn't be a problem for you." Bertrand was a little dumbfounded on the spot. Although this action was normal, and there was nothing wrong with it, but what's wrong, Mr. Bertrand? Didn't you just say that you're addicted to smoking? The black-haired young man said apologetically. I suddenly walked in, and I didn't smell the smoke. I probably interrupted you guys. I'm sorry. Then I'll have one. Holy Angel Bertrand braced himself. He quickly pulled out a stick and held it in his mouth. But, in fact, when this thing first spread from the lower world to the wings of liberty, it was very popular for a while. Then there was no more and then. Because the Saintess hated this smell. But it was really painful to kill a lot of people's hobby for a long time. It was a dark time when they had to be checked by the inspection team every day and smoke a cigarette as if they were in a spy war. If he smoked one, he wouldn't be discovered, as if there was a little Satan or little Lucifer instigating in his heart. Bertrand gulped and said, Lend me a light? The lighter isn't on me. The black-haired young man took out a lighter and lit it. Holy Angel Bertrand slowly exhaled a mouthful of thick smoke. He felt as if all the cells in his body had been activated. Comfortable. This feeling is really... Thank you, Mr. Judge. You're welcome. The black-haired young man smiled and immediately said, Mr. Bertrand, you don't seem to be from here. Why? Bertrand asked curiously. Can you tell? It's just a feeling, the black-haired young man said casually. It feels a little different from the people in the Freedom City. Holy Angel Bertrand immediately became alert. At this time, the black-haired young man said, Well, I know, Mr. Bertrand. You should be an immigrant from the other 7 cities. Ha ha ha. Yes, I'm from. I wasn't originally a resident of the Freedom City. Holy Angel Bertrand nodded. The black-haired young man asked casually, Mr. Bertrand, what do you think of the Freedom City? Freedom City? Holy Angel Bertrand froze subconsciously. This topic surprised him, but he still shook his head and looked out of the window thoughtfully. The wind here is a little messy. You like this city? I like the faith of this city. That's all. Holy Angel Bertrand said calmly. Unfortunately, its faith is experiencing some unprecedented difficulties. The black-haired young man said, Before the butterfly broke out of its cocoon, it also went through a period of struggle. You're right. Holy Angel Bertrand nodded. Indeed. Now, it's just like the butterfly before it broke out of its cocoon. I firmly believe that the City of Freedom will welcome a new era. At this moment, the Holy Angel Bertrand suddenly said, Mr. Judge, this corridor is straight ahead. After 3 doors, you will reach the backstage lounge. I have something else to do, so I won't be able to see you off. Please forgive me. It's okay. Then, thank you for the cigarette. See you if there's a chance. Holy Angel Bertrand nodded and quickly walked away from the other side. Seeing him leave, the black-haired young man looked out of the window again. From this position, he could see a stream of light flashing by and then disappearing into the rooftop of the building opposite the venue. It was an angel in the form of a woman. I can't stay here any longer. I have to go out. Daphne told herself that the lucky thing was that no one had come into the bathroom for such a long time. She was really glad about that. That Mr. Luo should have left after using the washroom. But why is he here backstage? Shaking his head, Daphne was about to open the door, but the door of the women's washroom suddenly opened a little. Daphne immediately closed the door of the washroom again. Although with his current appearance, it didn't matter even if he bumped into the person who came in. However, he instinctively wanted to avoid such a thing from happening. He felt that if he casually entered the women's washroom with his current appearance, he would be regarded as a shameless person. He didn't know who came in. However, Daphne felt that the person who came in seemed to be checking this place. He felt that the doors of each washroom were being opened one by one. It was his turn to be stunned. Daphne was so nervous that he covered his mouth and shrunk his body. However, he stopped opening the door. The person who came and walked into the cubicle next to him. Daphne didn't dare to make a sound. He heard some people taking off their clothes. After a while, Daphne saw a blood-stained bandage falling out from the slit under the cubicle. Daphne immediately retracted her legs as well. The bandage that was stained with blood was also pulled back at this moment. He even heard some muffled sounds. After a while, the sound stopped. Then the cubicle door was opened, and the sound of water came from the wash basin in front of him. After a while, the person left here. After a while, Daphne tentatively walked out again. After confirming that there was no one here, he let out a sigh of relief. Driven by curiosity, Daphne opened the cubicle that the person had just used. There was nothing left here. There was only a faint fragrance left. It seemed to be the smell of some kind of perfume. Confused, Daphne finally shook his head. Then, he tried to look as natural as possible in front of the mirror before opening the door and leaving. Since when was there a under repair sign hanging here? Looking at the sign hanging on the door handle, Daphne frowned. Did that person just hang it? Mr. Arthasheth smelled something musty. This should be the basement of Minter Calvin's house. He remembered this smell. But at this moment he was blindfolded, his hands and feet were tied, and he was thrown into this place. Arthasheth had been awake for a few minutes, and he had figured out the reason why he fainted. That cup of bitter coffee that made people frown. He couldn't help but sigh. It seemed that Minter Calvin really did something dangerous behind his back. Otherwise, he wouldn't have locked him up. After Mr. Assakes wiped off the blindfold on his face, he began to look around the basement. Soon, he began to roll his body toward the corner of the wall and began to rub the rope on his body on the iron frame of a cabinet. Soon after, the rope fell, and he was able to regain his freedom. Assakes came to the basement door and tried to open it, but he couldn't. He shook his head, thought for a while, then squatted down and took out a few keys from the bottom of his shoe. One of them directly opened the basement door. Mr. Assakes clapped his hands and easily left the basement. Minter Calvin, I usually help you with the chores in your house. I even changed the door lock for you. You underestimate me, don't you think? However, Mr. Assakes walked around the house, but he didn't see Minter Calvin. As for Robert, who claimed to be Minter Calvin's nephew, he didn't see him either. Where did they go? In the end, Arthasheth sat in Scholar Calvin's study and thought about the purpose of his mentor, as well as the words that Calvin had said before he fainted. The sinful land. The route back then? Suddenly, Mr. Assakes stood up and quickly walked to the bookcase next to him and began to rummage through it. Holy water, Master Marianne, there must be something left behind, even if it's just a little bit. There it is. He found a piece of information. To be exact, it was a book. The cover of the book was torn off, but the name of the author could be found on the second page. Marianne. This was the book of Master Marianne, the discoverer of the holy water, who was put on trial in the Free City 200 years ago. This was probably the only clue he could find. Minter Calvin was very good at doing things, so there was basically no clue left behind. This book was probably something left behind from a long time ago. Maybe it was because it was the blood and sweat of a master, so Minter Calvin didn't destroy it. Even so, he still tore off the cover and hid it in a pile of unimportant books. If it wasn't for the fact that they were familiar with Minter Calvin's personality, they wouldn't have noticed anything. Even if they did, they wouldn't have thought much about the book with its cover torn off. After all, the name, Master Marianne, had been erased a long time ago. It wasn't an unreachable realm. Marianne, the title page. It wasn't an unreachable realm. Mr. Assakes read the title page softly and couldn't help but frown. It wasn't an unreachable realm. What kind of realm is it? God's realm? He turned to another page. There was a brief introduction of Master Marianne and a picture of Master Marianne. The page had turned yellow, and it looked more like a portrait than a picture. But when he looked at the portrait of this Master Marianne, a shocked expression appeared on Mr. Arthasheth's face. This woman, Kate Lily. How? Mr. Assakes was shocked. He closed the book and put it in his pocket. Then, he rushed out of Minter Calvin's house and ran like crazy. Backstage of the Holy Maiden ceremony, Boss Luo had just returned, but he saw the assistant of the mayor of Duran City anxiously looking for something. Mr. Luo, that's great. I finally found you. I went to the washroom. What's the matter? The rehearsal is about to start, and the judges are already in place. You're the only one left. The assistant said quickly. Boss Luo said, the rehearsal isn't a problem. After all, it allows the Holy Maiden to be more prepared. However, if the judges are also there, won't they be prejudiced when the actual competition starts? If the Holy Maiden's substitutes can break through before the actual competition starts, won't they be able to surprise the judges? The assistant smiled. It was obvious that he already had a solution to this problem. How do I get there? Boss Luo asked. Please come with me. Soon, the male assistant took Boss Luo to the recording hall. The audience wasn't allowed to enter yet. At this time, there were only some judges and staff members sitting under the stage. Ludic, Isabel, Nasta, Scholar Calvin, and the other judges, both male and female, were all seated. Seeing that the last judge had arrived, the director started to officially start the rehearsal. The judges were seated according to their priority. Scholar Calvin sat in the middle of the crowd. Beside him were Mr. Nasta and Principal Ludic. Ms. Isabel sat slightly further away, and Boss Luo was arranged to sit next to Ms. Isabel. This is Ms. Isabel's request. Mr. Luo, please forgive her. After the male assistant said this in a low voice, he revealed a wry smile and then awkwardly sat down in the back seat. Boss Luo had just sat down when Ms. Isabel leaned closer to him and said with a smile, "Is it because the Holy Maiden backstage is too beautiful, or did you meet that female star on the way? I'm right in front of you." "Ms. Isabel, you're too dazzling." Boss Luo said softly, "I think you should be on this stage." She laughed so hard that her chest shook. "But I don't like this stage. I only like the people on this stage." "I like this stage." Boss Luo smiled. "And I like the people on this stage." Isabel chuckled. At this moment, the lights in the recording hall dimmed, and then the stage lights lit up. The host walked out slowly, which meant that the final rehearsal had officially started. The host said a few words and then said loudly, "Then on this legendary stage, we'll welcome the first Holy Maiden substitute tonight. Let's welcome the first Holy Maiden substitute onto the stage." "I'm so excited. I wonder what kind of performance the first Holy Maiden substitute will give me." The host's voice was still ringing. All the lights were shining on the stage, and along with the host's voice, there was still no movement on the stage. Maybe the first girl is always a little nervous. Perhaps we should give her more encouragement and applause? But this time, there was no applause. At this time, all the judges were staring at the stage with different expressions. They saw a girl rolling down from the ceiling of the stage. The girl's body was entangled with red ribbons. The ribbons finally fell down, and the girl's body was entangled in the air in a position that ordinary people couldn't bear. She was like a puppet with strings. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. 1/2. Chapter 2140. The backstage of the stage was huge, and all the Holy Maiden candidates had gathered here. The Holy Maiden candidates were selected from all the areas under the jurisdiction of the Freedom City. Only the girls who passed the selection ceremony were qualified to enter the Freedom City Academy. Even so, not every girl who entered the Holy Maiden class could participate in the Holy Maiden ceremony. Some of them didn't even have the chance to participate in the ceremony after graduation. Strictly speaking, the competition for the title of Holy Maiden is still very fierce, right? The first-year students who were accompanying the ceremony felt extremely uncomfortable when they were about to step on the stage. The Academy's teachers were trying to persuade the first-year students. The number of people who participated in the Holy Maiden ceremony this time was much higher than the previous ones. However, many of them were temporarily recruited by the higher-ups. As the Academy's teachers, they knew some inside information about the ceremony. The Resurrection Day was just around the corner. Looking at the emotional first-year girls, the teachers could only try their best to comfort and encourage them. As for the girls who had experienced the ceremony in the past, the teachers felt less worried. However, to the teacher's surprise, there seemed to be a few unfamiliar faces in this year's ceremony. So there were these students in the academy? In fact, she had seen some information about these unfamiliar faces, but the information was only simple personal information. At the end of the information was the identity of the transfer students. Then, these unfamiliar girls were not under her leadership. This made the teacher think about the problem between the shareholders of the academy. However, she couldn't interfere in this kind of problem. The instructor saw an acquaintance appear. You are Selin? Ah, it's Teacher Jita. You're finally here. Teacher Jita, who was leading the first-year students, couldn't help but feel excited. I heard that you didn't participate in the parade this year because of the sponsor. I didn't expect to see you here. How are you doing, Selin? You took a break from school for a long time, but there was no news at all. What happened? Various and some personal reasons. Sister Selin didn't want to talk too much about this issue. She quickly said, I will work hard tonight. You can do it. Jita patted Sister Selin's shoulder lightly. You have always worked harder than anyone else. I believe that many people are waiting for your return. You being able to pull yourself together again is something that I am happy to see. Tonight, perform well. You don't have many opponents tonight. Sister Selin shook her head and said with a bitter smile, Teacher, if you say that, it's unfair to the freshmen. I think that every girl who was selected is the most outstanding. I'm the one who taught the students, so I know what to do. What they need is experience. But tonight's stage needs you guys. The few Kais who failed in the previous batch. Sister Celine was slightly stunned. She subconsciously searched backstage for her competitors from the previous batch. She hesitated for a moment before asking in a low voice, Where's Yulia? I feel like I haven't seen her. I didn't see it either. Teacher Jita shook her head. The rehearsal has already started, but she still hasn't appeared. But this child is always on time. She is also very outstanding. She will come back. As your biggest competitor, you should look forward to her appearance. Teacher, I'll go and change my clothes first. Sister Selin nodded. Go, I'll look forward to it too. Teacher Jita smiled kindly. Then, she clapped her hands and lectured the freshmen again. All right, the one you saw just now was Selin, the 5th place of the previous Holy Maiden ceremony. There will be plenty of opportunities to meet her in the future. Now listen to me. Remia, what are you looking at? Are you still trying to distract yourself at this moment? Among the girls who were being lectured, Remia was startled. She hurriedly adjusted her gaze, but her gaze still snuck suspicious glances to the side. But she couldn't see it anymore. She seemed to have seen it somewhere before. It seemed to be Dasher's back, but how was that possible? This was the backstage of the Holy Maiden candidate. Dasher wouldn't appear here. That was close. Daphne leaned against the wall and smiled bitterly. Not only did he have to maintain his current disguise, but he also had to make sure Remia didn't recognize him. What kind of epic-level mission was this? She didn't even prepare her performance on stage. But, looking at her number, Daphne didn't have the mood to complain anymore. The third one to go on stage, you are? Daphne? At this moment, Daphne heard a rather familiar voice. He subconsciously looked over and instantly recognized the girl in front of him. Kalili, why are you also? You are also a candidate for the Holy Maiden? Didn't she say that she wasn't a student of the academy? So, she was lying? I can be considered as one. The maid of Rose Mansion replied simply, I will go to the changing room first. Goodbye. The maid hurriedly walked away from Daphne. Daphne felt that the K or Lily he met today was more worried than the last time they met in the academy. She seems to be worried about something. Is she okay? Daphne's nose suddenly twitched. He sniffed forward subconsciously. This fragrance is from earlier. At this moment, a sharp scream sounded from the backstage. Daphne hurriedly rushed out from around the corner. She saw a young girl dressed to the nines, covering her mouth with a pale face. Her face was filled with horror. What happened? Dead. Someone is dead. Someone died. In an instant, the entire backstage makeup mirror used by the Holy Maiden candidates fell into a deathly silence. Everyone subconsciously looked at this panic-stricken girl. This girl should be the second one to go on stage. Quick, put her down. Quick, someone come. In the dim recording hall, the light still shone on the stage. The girl who was tied up by a ribbon was in a weird position. Her legs were spread open, and her hands were raised high, as if she was leaping. This was the classic jumping movement in ballet. However, the girl's head hung down strangely. A silver dagger was stabbed into her heart, and blood dripped down from the dagger. In an instant, everyone on the judging panel stood up and looked at the young girl who was hanging in midair. Their expressions were indescribably different. What are you waiting for? Quick, put him down. The director's voice sounded, and several staff members rushed out from both sides in a panic. Don't put her down. At this moment, the male assistant of Mayor Durand rushed out and stopped the staff members. You can't put her down. You will destroy the evidence. But I'll take responsibility. The male assistant gritted his teeth. From now on, no one is allowed to get close to the dance. I'll contact the investigators from the public security office, but before that, then the male assistant looked at everyone in the room. Under the immense pressure, he braced himself and looked at the big shots of the Freedom City. Before this, I hope that everyone here won't leave the recording hall. This includes everyone backstage. After the initial shock, the judges quickly calmed down. They didn't say anything and just sat down silently. They knew that Durand's assistant was right. If they were in his shoes, they would have done the same. However, the Holy Maiden candidate's death on stage had a huge impact, especially on the eve of the Resurrection Day. I can stay here, but who can lower the curtain? I don't want to keep staring at a corpse or be stared at by it. A judge frowned. Don't move and don't lower the curtain. The male assistant braced himself and said, Don't move anything here. If you think it's inappropriate, you could turn around. Forget it. The judge muttered and turned his face to the other side. Hurry up and call the people from the public security office. Do we have to wait until tonight? The male assistant nodded with an ugly expression and took out his phone. However, the first thing he did was not to call for the investigators from the public security office. Instead, he dialed Mayor Durand's number. His heart was trembling with fear. The reason for his fear was that the girl who died on the stage in such a strange manner was Mr. Durand's niece. Other than that, the girl was also one of the most popular candidates for this ceremony. She had a lot of supporters and had a high chance of being one of the top 3 candidates for this ceremony. You don't look scared at all? Miss Isabel suddenly asked Boss Luo. You don't look surprised at all. Boss Luo blinked and said, Because I have facial neuritis. What's that? Miss Isabel frowned subconsciously. Generally speaking, it means facial paralysis. Boss Luo blinked again. Miss Isabel stared blankly for a moment before chuckling softly. When this Miss Isabel laughed, the ripples in front of her body trembled abnormally. So you also know how to joke? Boss Luo would occasionally be mischievous. This originated from the cheerful part of his personality. It became more obvious after he received the legacy in the central tower of the underwater city. Isn't Miss Isabel the same? She doesn't look scared either. I'm scared. Isabel squinted her eyes. My heart is beating fast and my palms are cold. I think I need some warmth in my hands and my heart. Boss Luo casually took out a blanket. It was something that was prepared on every seat. Isabel chuckled and didn't care. She picked up the blanket and put it on her body. She even adjusted her sitting position to look at the girl's corpse hanging on the stage. She suddenly said, She's very beautiful, right? Just like a swan spreading its wings. A dead swan? Boss Luo blinked again. Miss Isabel rolled her eyes. Negative emotion, 10086. Her favorability remained unchanged. Her name is Huang. She said abruptly, She's a graduate. This year's ceremony is the last one she can attend. This child has been very active and hardworking in my sacred ritual class. However, she still lacks some luck. Pity? Boss Luo suddenly asked. Isabel shook her head lazily. There's nothing to feel sorry about. To be able to die on the stage that she loves and even have her soul return to this place for a long time. Perhaps it's a lucky thing for her? Boss Luo said, According to the Holy Light Kingdom, after a person dies, the soul will enter the embrace of the Lord. It's like saying that you're not a person of the Holy Light Kingdom. Isabel held her chin lightly. Her eyes were filled with indulgence and the desire to get something, but it seemed that she couldn't get it no matter how hard she tried. She suddenly stood up, and without greeting anyone, she walked directly to the entrance of the passageway. The male assistant of the city lord of Durand City hurried forward. Miss Isabel, where are you going? You can't leave this recording hall now. Touch on my makeup. She chuckled. and solve some physiological problems. If I can't leave, do you want to help me solve this physiological problem? Miss Isabel, please, please don't make things difficult for me. The male assistant had a bitter expression. The judges in this recording hall all had powerful backgrounds. Even if he didn't offend them, he wouldn't be able to suppress them if they really became tough. You're the one making things difficult for me, Isabel said casually. You're making me do this in front of so many people. However, he really couldn't set a precedent. Otherwise, the other judges might find other reasons to leave. While he was in a dilemma, the door of the recording hall opened. The managers of the 7 capitals walked in one by one. Mr. Durand, the city lord of the Freedom City, was the first to rush to the stage with a sorrowful expression. He stood in front of the stage and silently looked at the girl in midair. Then, Durand looked around and said in a low voice, "No one is allowed to leave this place before the investigation is over. No matter how prominent your identity is, I'll say it. City Lord Durand, please calm down." Grand Scholar Calvin slowly opened his eyes and said calmly, "We'll do our best to cooperate with your investigation, but please don't panic." "I know." The city lord took a deep breath and then ordered, "From now on, not only this stage, but the entire hall will be temporarily locked down. Everyone must be carefully checked. No need to go through so much trouble." At this moment, a calm voice sounded. A young man slowly walked out from the group of managers of the 7 capitals with his hands behind his back. Beside this young man, the managers of the 7 capitals all maintained their humility, with their heads slightly lowered. "Mr. Lang?" The city lord of the Durand city opened his mouth. "That young man." Angel Lang waved his hand. "I said no need to go through so much trouble. Soon, I'll know who the murderer is. I'll use my eyes to see for you." With that, Angel Lang walked directly to the stage. With a wave of his hand, the hanging girl's corpse instantly fell to the ground and smashed onto the stage, making a dull thud. The city lord of the Durand city lord's expression changed slightly. He gritted his teeth and didn't say anything. At this moment, Angel Lang walked directly to the stage and came to the girl's corpse. He casually stretched out his hand, and a golden light slowly spread out from his palm. "As long as we check her destiny log, we'll know what happened before she died," Angel Lang said calmly. The managers of the 7 capitals nodded inwardly. This was indeed the fastest and most effective method, but this method could only be done by the Supremes and their envoys. Angel Lang's palm continued to shine. However, after a long time, Angel Lang's palm was still shining. He also stood still. "Mr. Lang?" The city lord of the Durand city lord couldn't help but ask, "Is it done?" Angel Lang retracted his hand expressionlessly. He began to ponder. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him, as if they were about to burst out of their sockets. But Angel Londo was still muttering to himself. "How should I tell this group of people that the girl's destiny system can no longer be opened? This is very awkward." Angel Lang continued to ponder. Chapter 2141. In the quiet recording hall, it was the Pope of the city of blazing heavens who bore the brunt of everyone's attention. The white-haired Pope had no choice but to face everyone's gazes. "Sir Longdew, do you know who the murderer is?" This angel had been silent for so long, it was time for him to give an answer. But Longdew looked at the Pope with a frown. "Is there a problem?" the Pope hurriedly asked. Langdo looked around and nodded. "The mandate of heaven on the deceased cannot be unlocked." Everyone was stunned, especially the managers of the 7 capitals who knew more about the destiny system. Their gazes were filled with disbelief. The Pope of the city of blazing heavens was even more hesitant. "Sir, it can't be unlocked." "Why can't it be unlocked?" Longdew said directly. "What if the deceased destiny system was destroyed by unknown means in order to cut off all clues? Or, before she died, she had already become a fallen, and the destiny system automatically stripped her of her destiny. Hua Ing would never become a fallen. She's a candidate for the Holy Maiden." The mayor of Durand City was slightly agitated. The clash of words attracted the attention of Langdo's angel. The mayor of Durand City instantly felt his heart skip a beat. Saints had a majesty that saints couldn't look directly at, and so did these high-ranking angels. It wasn't too strong, but it was enough to make him uncomfortable. If the deceased's destiny was deliberately destroyed by the murderer, could this be related to Holy Fall? The Pope's voice sounded at this moment. The Pope's words could be considered as helping the mayor of Duran City. The mayor of Duran City looked at the Pope gratefully, then retreated to the side. Whether or not it's related, since the murderer killed a candidate for the Holy Maiden, it's a provocation to us, not only in the City of Freedom, but also in the entire Holy Light Kingdom. There hasn't been such a vile deed. Another manager of the Seven Capitals also spoke up. Sir Longdew, please investigate thoroughly. This impassioned manager of the Seven Capitals gave Longdew a way out of this embarrassing situation. Of course I will investigate thoroughly. I don't need you to tell me to do anything. Longdew looked coldly at the manager, who gave him a way out of this embarrassing situation. What's wrong with this angel? He felt that ever since the management meeting, this angel's actions have been quite strange. Even if she didn't have the proper authority, she should at least have the virtues of an angel. However, this high-ranking angel gave people the feeling that he was absent-minded and even impatient. Don't bother. Langdo suddenly snorted. I'll open your destiny diaries one by one. I'll know who did what. Even if some of you have corrupted souls, I'll be able to find out. Let's start with you. Although Lord Angel had the authority to open the destiny diaries of the Holy Light Kingdom, the destiny diaries recorded all the secrets of an individual. It was the most private part of one's soul. The managers of the Seven Capitals were rather outstanding high-ranking petitioners themselves, and their moral conduct had been tested extensively. Even so, the moment they learned that their most private hearts were about to be dug out, a hint of hesitation instinctively appeared on their faces. This had nothing to do with faith. It was more of an instinct. Let's start with you. Rondo directly pointed at the Duran City Lord. Huang is my niece. How can I be the murderer who murdered her? The Duran City Lord couldn't help but become agitated again. However, Rondo calmly said, if you didn't do it, this will be the best proof. If you do that, your excuses will become weak and powerless. After saying that, Rondo directly attacked, and a light shone on the Duran City Lord. No, I'm the City Lord of the Freedom City, one of the managers of the Seven Capitals. Even if you want to open my destiny diaries, only the Supreme can do it. Feeling like something in his body was being peeled away, the Duran City Lord subconsciously took 2 steps back. The destiny diaries slowly floated out of his chest. The Duran City Lord's eyes lost all light. He even directly knelt on the ground and looked up blankly. Seeing this, the expressions of the managers of the Seven Capitals changed slightly. Duran's current state would soon be their state. Enough. It was like a clap of thunder. However, the voice wasn't loud. It was just that in this deathly silence, it was especially loud. It was a woman's voice. Along with the voice, a stream of light gradually appeared in front of everyone. She finally appeared in front of the Duran City Lord and gently pressed the destiny diaries into his body. Jerabel, what are you doing? Rondo's interrogative voice sounded at the same time. At this moment, the destiny diaries had completely returned to the Duran City Lord's body. However, the Duran City Lord didn't immediately wake up and fell to the ground. The woman on the scene, Angel Jerabel, said calmly, Who will take care of him? I'll do it. The one who spoke was the assistant of the Duran City Lord. Hearing this, he gritted his teeth and walked up with a face full of respect and fear. Trembling, he helped the Duran City Lord sit up. Greetings, Lady Jerabel. At this moment, the Pope of the City of Blazing Sky hurriedly saluted. The managers of the Seven Capitals also saluted. I already know what happened here. Angel Jerabel waved her hand and glared fiercely at Rondo in front of her. Rondo wanted to say something, but stopped. Under Angel Jerabel's gaze, he took a deep breath and exhaled. In the end, he fell silent. From this, it could be seen that Angel Jerabel's position seemed to be higher than Rondo's. At least in the army of the archangels, this should be the case. The Pope couldn't help but think to himself. Rondo's actions were more extreme, but you must believe that he didn't target you. He just wanted to find the murderer as soon as possible. Angel Jerabel said calmly, You are all the most loyal believers of my Lord." This was much nicer to hear. Although it was suspected that Angel Jerubel was playing the villain, at least it showed that this Angel Jerubel was a reasonable person. The managers of the 7 capitals looked much better. At this moment, Angel Jerubel walked directly to the stage and came to the side of Hua Ying's body, carefully observing it. At this moment, Rondo went straight to Jerubel's side. He even secretly released a small sound isolation spell around himself and Jerubel. "Why did you stop me from opening Duran's Diary of Destiny? I don't have time to argue with a brute like you." Angel Jarabi said, "I even suspect that the Archangel made a mistake when she molded you, so your brain wasn't molded properly. Jerubel, look at you now. Are you still a high angel?" Angel Jerubel looked up at this moment, and there seemed to be a divine light in her eyes. "You shouldn't only be brave." Rondo, however, was slightly angry. "What's wrong with what I did? This is the fastest way to find the murderer. This is the stupidest way to do it." Angel Jerubel snorted lightly. "Do you know how many people there are in this place? If you want to check them one by one, how long will you take?" Everyone who you read through the diary fainted for a while. "Based on what you did, should we continue with the Holy Maiden ritual? If no new Holy Maiden is born, what should we do on the day of resurrection?" I don't believe it. I'll find the last one." Rondo shook his head. However, even he felt that he couldn't refute it. There was a thought in his mind that made him subconsciously want to refute. "What's wrong with you today?" Angel Jerubel suddenly frowned. Impulsive, easily angered, and arrogant, Rondo couldn't help but feel a chill on his back. He shook his head and closed his eyes tiredly. Maybe it's because of the high pressure brought by the Holy Fall. The Supreme Beings can't even leave because they have to watch over the gathering of the power of will in the Freedom City. They're also very careful, so Okay, stop talking. Angel Jerubel shook her head lightly. The ritual must continue as scheduled. The truth of this girl's death must also be investigated. These two things must be done at the same time. What do you mean? Angel Jerubel thought for a moment and said, "After the incident, I locked down the venue immediately, and no one has left yet. This means that the murderer is still hiding here. So, be prepared," Angel Jerubel said. "You stay here and let the ritual start smoothly. I'll investigate the murder. We'll act separately. Although one of the substitutes was killed, as long as the ritual can start, it's good." "Okay, we'll do as you say." Rondo suppressed the irritation in his heart and nodded calmly. The judges sat down again. In addition to the original judges, there were also the managers of the 7 capitals and Angel Rondo in the recording hall. Duran City, Lord woke up after a while and found out about the current situation from his assistant. After finding out that his destiny diary wasn't opened in the end, the city lord seemed to be relieved, but his face was still pale and even somewhat complicated. Soon, the stage was cleaned up. The second girl who was supposed to be on the stage was now waiting for the final rehearsal to continue. However, for the Holy Maiden's substitute backstage, it was as if she had used up all of her courage to step onto the stage, let alone show off her skills. The second girl to step onto the stage gritted her teeth and performed under the state of being full of mistakes and loopholes. However, most of the judges were no longer paying attention to this girl. In the end, the girl on the stage couldn't take it anymore and fell to the ground. She covered her face and started sobbing softly. Too much trouble for her. This was what most of the judges thought. There's no need for rehearsals. Let's start when the time is up. Angel Rondo said coldly, "Ask these substitutes to get off the stage and adjust themselves. To become a qualified holy maiden, this kind of mentality isn't good enough." The girl who was sobbing on the stage couldn't take it anymore and burst into tears. The MC on the stage could only ask someone to send her off and then ordered the curtains to be drawn down. Angel Rondo leaned lazily on the back of the chair, as if he was thinking about something absent-mindedly. Suddenly, he looked at President Balaam not far away and said, "Balaam, I'm thirsty. Give me something to drink. Do you still have that fruit juice?" It was very strange. When this Lord Angel suddenly mentioned fruit juice, the managers of the 7 capitals all subconsciously moved their throats. There was an indescribable taste that suddenly spread through their taste buds. When they drank it in the past, it was tasteless like drinking water. But when they thought about it, there seemed to be a strange taste. The managers of the 7 capitals looked at President Ballum instinctively. President Ballum smiled faintly and said, "Then I'll go prepare some drinks for everyone. It's inevitable that we'll be thirsty while waiting." Langdo just waved his hand, as if urging him to hurry. President Ballum hurriedly went out to give the order. Not long after, someone came in with 2 boxes. The boxes were filled with small bottles of fruit juice. Under President Ballum's instructions, the person distributed the bottles of fruit juice to everyone. The Angel Rondo, the managers of the 7 capitals, even the judges and the cameraman on the side of the stage gave out some. "I don't need it." When the waiter came to Scholar Calvin, he heard the Grand Scholar's direct refusal. The waiter was stunned and stood rooted to the ground. Ludic President Ballum smiled faintly and said, "Teacher Calvin is an ascetic. If he's thirsty, it's good for him. I'll kindly accept your bottle. I'm really thirsty." Ludic President Ballum took the bottle of fruit juice from the waiter and drank a few mouthfuls. "Thank President Ballum for his kindness. The fruit juice tastes really good." The waiter didn't say anything. He just nodded and continued to distribute, until he came to Boss Luo and looked at the box. He found that the fruit juice in the box was gone. The waiter opened his mouth. It was finished. "Impossible. There should be more." "I'm fine," Boss Luo smiled and said. "I'm not used to drinks. I'll just drink water." The waiter nodded and said, "Please wait for a moment. I'll get you a glass of water." Boss Luo shook his head and said, "You're welcome. I brought it myself." After that, Boss Luo took out a thermos flask. Then, okay. The waiter secretly glanced at President Ballum and saw his gaze. He nodded and turned to leave. "I don't want fruit juice either." Miss Isabel suddenly said, "I'm starting to covet the water in your thermos flask." "I'm afraid that's a little difficult, Miss Isabel." Boss Luo looked apologetic and said, "Of course, if you don't mind, I have another one here." Boss Luo took out another thermos flask. Wasn't this already very intelligent? Miss Isabel couldn't help but blink. She couldn't tell where this guy had stuffed 2 thermos flasks on him. Stage on the scaffolding above the stage. Angel Jarabi came to the spot where Hua Ying fell. She seemed to be looking for something. Soon, she squatted down and picked out a slender thread from the gap of the scaffolding. It looked like hair, reddish-brown hair. Chapter 2142. She placed a strand of hair in her palm. For Angel Jarabi, this small clue was enough. Soon, this strand of hair that she found at the scene floated out of Angel Jarabi's palm. This would lead her to the owner of the strand of hair. However, the strand of hair only floated out for a moment before it spontaneously combusted in the air. In the end, not many ashes were left. Angel Jarabi's expression gradually turned solemn. This meant that the owner of the strand of hair couldn't be found. In fact, the owner of the strand of hair might be much more powerful than her. However, at this moment, in the City of Freedom, there shouldn't be anyone more powerful than her, a high angel, in theory, except for those supreme saints. This matter was much more serious than it seemed on the surface. Time passed little by little. As a high angel, she still hadn't made any progress in finding the culprit. This was extremely inconceivable. Powerful strength seemed to be useless in this matter. There were too many restrictions. In order to complete the Holy Maiden ritual smoothly, she couldn't stop everything. This matter wasn't something that she could easily solve. At this moment, Angel Jarabi was even a little hesitant. She didn't know if she should call the Archangel now. The Holy Maiden ritual is related to the resurrection of the saints. There can't be any mistakes. If I make a mistake in this matter, I'm afraid the consequences. With this thought, Angel Jarabi no longer hesitated. She turned into a stream of light and came to the roof of the building. She slowly knelt down toward the sky and prayed, called. Soon, a beam of light shot down from the sky and shone on Angel Jarabi's body. She knew that this was the Archangel's response. Not daring to hesitate, Angel Jarabi hurriedly told him everything that had happened. She lowered her head. After telling him everything, she could only wait. It seems that someone doesn't want the resurrection day to go smoothly. A gentle voice sounded in Angel Jarabi's ears. She subconsciously raised her head and saw a barefooted man in coarse linen clothes. Archangel, St. John. My lord. Angel Jarabi was a little surprised. She didn't expect this lord to come at this time. The creation of the willpower went smoothly. The man in rough clothes nodded and said, "Now it's the finishing work. It doesn't matter if I'm not here. Or rather, I should be paying more attention to the Holy Maiden ritual. Sir, after the murder appeared, I immediately sealed off the entire venue." Angel Jarabe quickly said, "I've discussed with Longdu, and it's better to start the ceremony as scheduled. It's just that we don't know where the murderer is hiding right now." St. John thought for a moment and said, "Why do you think the murderer killed a Holy Maiden candidate?" Angel Jarabe said, "I'm afraid it's because of this ceremony. I even suspect that it's the same thing as the holy fall of this saint in the Free City. On the day of the holy fall, Longdu once said that he followed a certain light but lost it. The person behind this light is most likely the one who caused the holy fall of the saint." St. John didn't say anything. Angel Jarabi couldn't help but ask nervously, "My lord, am I wrong?" "Yes, but it's also not right." At this moment, St. John gently shook his head and said with a calm expression, "The person who killed the Holy Maiden candidate is the same as the one who caused the holy fall, so I agree. But this time, the purpose is probably to make me or other supreme beings notice this place so that they can show up." "To make you show up?" Angel Jarabe was slightly shocked. "Who dares to do this?" "I don't know." St. John shook his head. "When I was creating the power of free will, I noticed an extremely obscure power filled with hatred flashing past the border of the Holy Light Kingdom. A power filled with hatred. How can this be?" Angel Jarabe opened his mouth in disbelief. "All the humans in the Holy Light Kingdom are the reincarnations of pure believers who ascended to heaven from the lower world. From the very beginning, they are people who have already given up their faith. How can there be hatred? Then it can only mean that there's a problem at the root." St. John pointed out. Angel Jarabe frowned. "My lord, I'm confused." St. John suddenly said, "If you're not confused, I think I need to be suspicious of you." Angel Jarabe was instantly shocked. She was about to say something, but St. John suddenly waved his hand. "Take me to the recording hall. Let me witness the birth of a new Holy Maiden." "My lord, you want to watch the ceremony?" Angel Jarabe was stunned. St. John said calmly, "It's the same whether I watch it in the sky or on the ground. Why can't I watch it on the spot? It's the same anyway, isn't it?" That was the truth, but Angel Jarabe felt that something was wrong. However, she couldn't explain it. However, she couldn't hesitate when it came to the orders of an archangel. Therefore, Angel Jarabe nodded. "My lord, please follow me." St. John took one step forward. In the first step, he noticed some changes in his appearance. It changed from divine to ordinary. The second step was to change into an ordinary set of clothes and put on a pair of shoes. On the third step, he turned into an inconspicuous young man. "Can it be faster?" In the car, Mr. Asakes urged the taxi driver impatiently. He was on the way back to the mansion. On the way, he called Kay or Lily. However, he still couldn't get in touch with Kay or Lily. "As you can see, it's all blocked. I can't do anything about it." The driver said helplessly, "There's a traffic jam everywhere. I'll get off here." Mr. Asakes threw a purple crystal card into the car and pushed the door open to get off. But at this moment, the phone rang. Mr. Arthashes hurriedly picked it up, but the person who called wasn't Chris. "Celine, why are you calling me at this time?" Mr. Asakes couldn't help but frown. "Sir, did you ask Miss Kay or Lily from your mansion to attend the Holy Maiden ceremony?" On the other side of the phone, Celine was silent for a moment and asked suddenly. Mr. Asakes said subconsciously, "Kay or Lily will attend the Holy Maiden ceremony? How is that possible? Wait, where are you?" I'm at the ceremony venue." Mr. Asakes was startled and then nodded. He didn't ask the reason, but quickly said, "Celine, I'm glad you're willing to step on this stage again. But I have to tell you, please leave this stage immediately. I don't want to stop you from becoming a holy maiden, but at least I hope you can leave this ceremony. Mr. Assakes, do you know something? There was a hint of worry in Sister Celine's voice. A murder case just happened here, and the victim is Hua Ying, the niece of Duran City Mayor. What? A scream was heard. The people around looked at Mr. Assakes. He quickly lowered his head and covered the phone, dodging to the side of the street. Celine, say it again. What happened at the venue? Sir, I can't talk to you for too long. Listen to me. Celine quickly said, I called you while I was hiding. Now, this place is under strict surveillance. Everyone is afraid and suspicious. Moreover, I really saw Miss Kalili here. Although I've only seen the maids of your residence from afar and have never formally met her, you know that I have a very good memory. So, she really is here. Okay, that's all I can say. There seems to be someone outside. I have to go out. Celine's voice gradually became softer. Mr. Assash's voice became louder and louder. Celine, listen to me. No matter what method you use, leave the venue immediately. There's no Jane. Celine? Looking at the disconnected call, Assakes was so angry that he wanted to smash the phone on the ground. But because he was poor, he couldn't do it in the end. Celine is at the venue. So is Kay or Lily. Duran's niece is dead. Mr. Assakes finally punched the wall in the alley. And that president's conspiracy, Teacher Calvin's doing. What the hell is this? I was only unconscious for a few hours. Why did I encounter all these at this age? What is this? The delayed treatment of a main character. Moreover, it was the kind of super trash that abused its master. Damn it. Gritting his teeth, Assakes turned around and ran to the street outside, running all the way to the venue of the conference. The person inside, I'll say it again. Please come out immediately. Hearing the heavy voice outside, Sister Celine nervously held the phone in the dressing room. She gritted her teeth and stepped on the phone under her foot. Then, she quickly took off her clothes, leaving only her underwear. Open the door. Sister Celine used her clothes to cover her body and opened the door, only to see a few girls standing outside. Sister Celine frowned. There are so many dressing rooms outside. Are you crazy? The girls outside the door quickly sized her up, and one of them said, I've been observing you for a long time. You took so long to change your clothes. Do you have any unspeakable secret? Senior Hua Ying's death, is it related to you? Sister Celine sneered, I have a secret, and now you've seen it all. You're scared, you're nervous, and you're even like frightened birds, huddling together and suspecting each other. That's your problem, but don't come looking for trouble with me for no reason. No matter what, I'm still your senior, the 5th place of the previous Holy Maiden candidate. Don't bother me if you don't have anything else. How could Sister Celine be afraid of this kind of backstage fight? Moreover, the opponents were a group of juniors who had never been pushed to the ground by society. She sneered, instead of wasting time on this kind of thing, you'd better adjust your mentality. Don't forget the lyrics and dance when you're officially on the stage. You've even forgotten how to please the judges. With that, Sister Celine slammed the door shut and no longer paid any attention to him. What's there to be proud of? So what if you're from the previous Holy Maiden? Didn't you still fail? You came back to fight with us this time. The girls said a few words angrily, but they seemed to feel that they couldn't stay any longer, so they left. Sister Celine immediately opened the door and walked out. These girls were not the first batch. In fact, since the official announcement of the cancellation of the dress rehearsal and the waiting time was up, the Holy Maiden candidates backstage were already in a mess. The mentors sent by the Academy couldn't control the situation at all. Mr. Assakes said it was dangerous here. Actually, even without him saying it, Sister Celine knew it would be dangerous to stay here. Murder might still be lurking in the venue. But now, the venue was locked down, so it wouldn't be easy to leave. Maybe I can talk to the headmaster? Sister Celine thought to herself. But at this time, they were not allowed to leave the backstage, let alone look for murder. There were people guarding the front and back of the corridor, and they wouldn't let them go. Miss Kay or Lily? A figure suddenly walked past Sister Celine. She didn't seem to notice that there was someone in the corridor and quickly walked past. Sister Celine hurriedly chased after him, but when she reached the corner, he was nowhere to be seen. She clearly saw that the person was Mr. Assash's little maid. She couldn't be mistaken. She looks a little strange. With that thought in mind, a shadowy figure appeared behind Sister Celian out of the blue. With extreme speed, the shadowy figure reached out and strangled Sister Celian's body, covering her mouth and nose. Sister Celine struggled in horror, but she was soon dragged into a dark room. Rose Mansion. Hundreds of halos hovered around Miss Maid. Her hands kept twisting the floating halos, and her eyes were fixed on the almost burned Destiny Diary. Fash's Destiny Diary remnant. What a cunning guy. Miss Maid's hands suddenly stopped moving. She didn't continue twisting the halos. Instead, she picked up the Destiny Diary and muttered to herself. There was a huge clock beside her. From the moment she entered the room, Miss Maid had set the time for herself. Hearing the sound of the pendulum clock, Miss Maid's frown gradually loosened. She looked back at the clock and seemed to have thought of something. She put down the things in her hands and walked out of the room for the first time. Rose Mansion was so empty that there was almost no sound. Miss Maid casually looked around and walked to the end of the corridor. In the room at the end of the corridor, a girl was lying on the bed. The girl from Donnermy Village, Jean. In front of the bed, Miss Maid looked at the girl's face. After a while, she said softly, "It's difficult to find the root of the problem in one day with conventional methods. We can only try some unconventional methods." With that said, Miss Maid stretched out her finger. Her fingers seemed to hesitate for a moment, but in the end, she quickly tapped on Jean's forehead. "You go on that stage as me." The girl on the bed began to slowly open her eyes. If Miss Nan was here, she would probably widen her eyes and look at him with admiration. Then, she would exclaim in amazement, "Good guy. No wonder he is the woman who oppressed me so much. He can even use me. What a scary guy." And so on. Chapter 2143. Stop. You can't pass here. I'm the sponsor of the Holy Maiden's Float and a live audience. Why can't I go in? You can't go in because it's not time for the opening yet. Mr. Assakes knew that there was no point in arguing. Moreover, he was just saying he really couldn't prove that he was the sponsor. He had to give up and leave the watchman's sight. He planned to find another way to enter the venue. Several cars with the logo of the Public Security Department were parked at the side. Mr. Assash's eyes turned, and he had an idea. Soon, among the investigators from the Public Security Department who got out of the car, an investigator who was walking at the back with a cigarette in his mouth was instantly dragged to the back of the car. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Boss Luo was looking at the time on the pocket watch in his hand. Miss Isabel looked over curiously. "You seem to care about the time very much." "I used to care about it," Boss Luo said casually. "You don't care now?" Isabel narrowed her eyes and smiled. "I care about it now," Boss Luo said. "I care that it suddenly disappears as it walks." Miss Isabel smiled. "The disappearing time is the past. The past disappears from time, but remains in the memory. You are actually counting the time. Only the most bored people count the passing of time." Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "Maybe you are right." Miss Isabel rested her chin on her hand. They sat together and looked intimate. Miss Isabel looked more and more like she was looking at a treasure. Her eyes became more and more passionate. "I've never had much interest in adult guys. Do you know why?" she suddenly asked. Boss Luo shook his head. He was more inclined to listen to the speaker's narration, even though his guess was not far from the truth. "Because I think the adult world is dirty." Isabel gently rubbed her forehead and said, "Maybe it's because they don't trust adults, or maybe it's because young boys and girls always have something that adults don't. In short, it can probably be summed up as because they're teenagers. But now that I think about it, there might be some prejudice. So there are people like you." "However," Boss Luo said, "in the Holy Light Kingdom, you should be able to find many role models. They are friendly, kind, and devout. It's precisely because of piety." Isabel shook her head. "Everything is based on piety. Working hard to become a role model is also because only by becoming a role model can you be recognized by the public. After being recognized by the public, role model will become a sharp blade hanging over your head." Boss Luo shook his head and said, "I can't define myself as kind. but you look like one. Isabel chuckled. And, putting aside all those inner things, I'm the type whose values follow my facial features. Boss Luo said, "Aren't you afraid that under my mask is the smiling face of the devil?" Isabel smiled. "This is the kingdom of holy light. Demons can't laugh. If there is, I'd like to meet them." At this moment, the sound of the door opening interrupted the conversation between the two. At the side door of the recording hall, Angel Jerabel walked in directly, and behind her was an ordinary-looking man. It was really a very ordinary face. The judges were also whispering among themselves. At this moment, seeing Angel Jerabel appear again, they all quieted down. The managers of the 7 capitals were about to get up, but Angel Jerabel waved her hand, indicating that they did not need to be so polite. After Angel Jerabel came in, she went directly to Angel Londo. As for the ordinary-looking man who followed her, he silently walked to a corner and sat down. "Have you found the murderer?" Angel Londo asked directly. "Not yet." Angel Jerabel shook her head. "But the ceremony is about to officially start. No matter what the murderer's ultimate goal is, if it wants to make a move again, it can only do it under our noses this time." Angel Londo nodded. "That's right. If the murderer appears again, it won't be able to escape this time. If it doesn't appear, at least the ceremony can be completed smoothly. So, who's the guy who followed you in?" Angel Jerabel didn't say anything and just gently shook her head. Angel Londo frowned slightly, and at the same time, the feeling of irritation in his heart grew stronger. Subconsciously, he picked up the juice and took a sip. At this moment, Angel Jerabel stood up and looked at the crowd. "Let's start the ceremony. This ceremony is not open to the audience. As for the reason, I believe the managers of the 7 capitals will quickly think of it. Not open to the audience. The reason will be quickly thought of." The managers of the 7 capitals had strange expressions. It wasn't that they couldn't think of a reason. In fact, they could use any reason, but at this moment, it was too difficult to prevent the audience from entering the hall. "Everyone, do you have any good suggestions?" However, he still had to carry it out. After all, this was an order from the Lord Angel. While the managers of the 7 capitals were racking their brains, someone was also frowning backstage. They were the investigators of the City of Freedom Public Security Department. They were called to the scene at the first moment, and they were all experienced investigators in the Public Security Department. However, they were faced with a murder case of a Holy Maiden candidate, which was incomparable to the previous cases they had investigated. Anyway, everyone, do your best. The mayor is very concerned about this matter. The male assistant of the mayor of Duran City was also here. In fact, it was the assistant who brought the investigators in. Even if you say so, the representative of the investigators smiled bitterly. Anyway, let us take a look at the body first. They had read some simple information on the way here. The victim was called Hua Ying, a graduate of the City of Freedom Academy. This was the last time she participated in the Holy Maiden ceremony, and she was the mayor's niece. Then, everyone in the venue at that time was a suspect. The male assistant quickly led a group of investigators to the place where Hua Ying's body was placed. Hua Ying's body was placed in a small room backstage. They weren't supposed to destroy the crime scene, but Angel Londo came up and put the body down. In the end, they still couldn't find the murderer. The ceremony had to continue, so Hua Ying's body had to be moved away temporarily. A group of investigators walked into the room. However, one of the investigators walked in the opposite direction with his back facing them. "Hey, why are you walking over there?" The investigator who had his back facing the investigators leaned against the wall and covered his stomach. He squeezed his legs and said in a trembling voice, I have a stomachache, a terrible stomachache. I can't take it anymore." As he said this, he covered his butt and rushed to the other side of the corridor. The investigators couldn't help but look at each other. "Forget it. Don't worry about this guy. Let's get down to business." The leader of the investigators shook his head. He also wanted to take a dump. This kind of deadly case could really be deadly if it was investigated. In the room, the girl was wearing a pink and white ballet costume. The tight costume perfectly showed the girl's figure. She didn't look like she was dead, but sleeping like a princess in a fairy tale who was waiting for the prince to kiss her awake, if one could ignore the dagger in her chest. The investigators surrounded the young girl's corpse and began to discuss. They also began to use the equipment to access all the information about Hua Ying. The information here was not as detailed as the Destiny Diary, but at least it recorded the general trajectory of Hua Ying from childhood to adulthood. She was excellent in both moral and academic performance, and came from a prominent family. In the eyes of the family, there was no stain on her, so there shouldn't be any enemies. According to the motive of the crime, this year's Holy Maiden candidate is more suspicious. Hua Ying has quite a lot of support this year. Yes, it's high, but it's far from being comparable to the most popular Yulia. If she just wanted to eliminate her competitors, wouldn't Yulia be a better choice? This is just a very common dagger, which can be found everywhere. If we want to trace the source, I'm afraid it won't be solved in a short time. The point is, we obviously don't have much time. Don't you think there's something wrong with the body? What's wrong? How should I put it? The investigator frowned and muttered. Compared to when she entered the door, I feel like she moved a little. Moved? How can a body move? You're right. Shaking his head, the investigator decided not to think about this absurd question. But at this moment, he frowned again. Did you hear anything? Everyone frowned, but they still listened subconsciously. There was nothing. The boss of the investigators couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. Do you want to go and take a dump? When that guy comes back, I'll expel him from the investigation team. Definitely. Boss, I'm really... The subordinate of the investigator looked miserable. When he was about to analyze something, his face suddenly changed. It moved. It really moved this time. Look. As he said that, the subordinate of the investigator pointed at the body. When the investigators looked over, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. The girl's body, which was originally placed on the sofa, was now sitting up. Her face was obviously pale, her chest was obviously stained with blood, and she was obviously not breathing. The girl's neck was now like a rusty gear, slowly turning. Suddenly, Huang opened her eyes, and her lips curled into a strange arc. The young girl's corpse, with her eyes open, was now facing the investigators with a strange smile. You're not dead? Huang still had that weird smile on her face. Her open pupils were even changing crazily at this moment. What's more, there was a cross-shaped mark in her pupils. At the same time, the space in the room began to distort. One after another, distorted vortexes as tall as a person began to fill every corner of the room. Then bald guys with horrifying cerebral cortex poked their heads out of these distorted vortexes. Instantly, the investigators only felt a chill on their backs. They did not even have the time to panic. Instinctively, they pulled out their pistols and pointed at the many people who appeared from the twisting vortexes. But soon, a twisting vortex appeared under their feet. Black arms quickly climbed up their bodies like shadows. Finally, the investigators were directly pulled into the vortex by the shadowy arms. Their mouths and noses were covered, and then slowly dragged into the vortex. The people in the vortex included the assistant of the mayor of Duran City, until finally, with fear in their eyes, they were completely dragged into the vortex and disappeared. The strange smile on Hua Ying's face suddenly disappeared. She slowly stood up, reached out to pull out the dagger in front of her chest, and threw on the ground. I can't wait any longer. One by one, strange frog-like fellows quickly walked out from her side. At this time, the vortex began to gather together and gradually expanded. The vortex first swallowed the room, then the door, and then the corridor. It was still expanding. He sat in an inconspicuous corner with his eyes closed, as if no one paid special attention to his existence. Even the fact that he originally followed the Angel Jarabi into the recording hall began to fade away. But at this time, the ordinary-looking man slowly opened his eyes. It's here again, that feeling of hatred, and it's here. The man frowned, but it's fine, since it took the initiative to appear behind the stage. The staff clapped his hands vigorously. Everyone, although many things have happened, the ceremony is about to begin. Okay, now, all the girls who participated in the ceremony, come to me. After the ceremony begins, you need to make a collective appearance. Everyone, cheer up. Although the staff was shouting very hard, the candidates were obviously not in high spirits at this time, and even when they were concentrating, they were a little sluggish. The staff didn't care about this, so he braced himself and said, I'll start the roll call now. The first one, Yulia. As expected, as the most popular candidate of this year, Yulia was the first one to be called. Everyone even felt that there was something wrong with her. The first one, Yulia. Yulia? The staff shouted several times, but there was no response. What's the matter? Is Yulia not here? A girl said hesitantly. Senior Yulia doesn't seem to be here. At least until now, I haven't seen her. Maybe she didn't come? The voices of discussion. Yulia didn't come? That was impossible. As the most popular contestant, if she didn't come, the staff didn't dare to imagine how angry the audience outside would be, because they were forbidden to enter the venue. Yulia, the staff shouted again, unwilling to give up. She's here. She's here. If you don't show up, I'm afraid I'll disqualify you. I'm coming. At this moment, the door to the backstage lounge was suddenly opened, and a young girl with a long skirt and a piece of bread in her mouth hurriedly ran in. Sorry, I was too hungry, so I found something to eat on the way. Chapter 2144. The girl seemed to have a special magical power. After she entered, the depressing atmosphere in the dressing room seemed to lighten up. Perhaps it was because the way she appeared was special. She was still holding a piece of bread in her mouth. Since you're here, come over here. The staff member adjusted his glasses and said quickly, Senior Yulia, come over here. A girl in the team waved her hand enthusiastically. Oh, okay. I'm coming over. As expected of this year's #1 Holy Maiden candidate, the moment she appeared, the girls in the backstage all started to greet her. After a while, everyone's eyes fell on her. A few girls who were close to Yulia asked in a low voice, Senior, are you okay? Such a terrible thing happened. When you came in, those guards didn't make things difficult for you, right? I don't think so, Yulia said casually. You don't think so? They didn't. Oh, the girls didn't doubt her, but they looked worried. I heard that the murderer hasn't been caught yet. If the murderer is still hiding in the venue, I don't know if we'll be the next target. Senior Hua Ying's body is still here. I feel so scared. I don't know what those big shots are thinking. Amidst the commotion, the staff member's roll call was almost over. Celine, is Celine here? Celine went to the dressing room and didn't come back. A girl suddenly said, She's been hiding in there. I don't know what secret she has. There's no one in the dressing room, another girl said, because I just came out. I'm the last one. Whatever, if she comes back, she'll be the last one to go on stage. The staff member shook his head and clapped his hands. Now, follow me to the two sides of the stage and get ready. The girls had to calm down and line up to enter the stage. They soon came to the side of the stage and waited silently. Time always passed slowly while waiting, and it was easy for people to look around randomly. Glass shoes? Yulia, the most popular girl, suddenly noticed that there was a girl wearing glass shoes on the same side as her, and she seemed a little absent-minded. Won't these shoes hurt your feet? Miss Yulia muttered softly. In the corridor, Mr. Asakes quickly took off the investigator's coat that he picked up and threw it into the trash can. He suddenly felt that this method of entering the backstage of the venue was a little too smooth. However, it was no longer the time to be overly cautious. He needed to bring Selin and Kay Ilili away before President Balam's scheme succeeded or even before it was launched. As for stopping them, Mr. Asakes didn't really think of himself as a savior. He didn't have the ability to go against the president of the city of Dawn, especially when Balam might have fed the managers of the 7 capitals the holy water. President Balam was clearly not fighting alone, but Mr. Arthasheth was alone in Jandwa. By the way, why is this place so big? Mr. Asakes walked in one of the corridors in the backstage in a daze. He didn't have a clear idea of where Sister Selin and Kay Ilili were. Unfortunately, he couldn't get through to them on the phone. It was as if something had suddenly flashed past. When Mr. Asakes turned around, He only saw a black shadow flash by and disappear. This caused him to be on guard at once. "Who's there?" Mr. Ashace slowly walked towards the spot where the black figure had disappeared. He even picked up a fire extinguisher placed in the corridor. Suddenly, Mr. Ashace picked up the fire extinguisher, turned around, and viciously threw the fire extinguisher out. He smashed something. A guy who seemed to have his brain draped over his skull. Mr. Ashace gasped. Before he could think, his body instinctively took a few steps back. He seemed to have stepped on something. When Mr. Ashace lowered his head, he saw that the area below his calf had sunk into something that looked like mud, black mud. What a shock! Mr. Ashace quickly reached out to pull his leg out. But to his surprise, the speed of the mud sinking increased by a lot. In the end, Mr. Ashace was submerged in this black mud-like substance. At this moment, the end of the corridor was flowing like water, and the black mud was spreading rapidly. This seemed to be a room where all kinds of items were placed. At this moment, Sister Selene was being strangled from behind, and her mouth was covered tightly. She couldn't break free, so she could only try her best to remain calm. She felt that the guy who sneak attacked her and dragged her into the room didn't mean any harm. This unusual feeling was innate. Since she was very young, Sister Selene discovered that she could easily sense other people's emotional state. No matter how well she concealed it, the moment she came into contact with someone, she could reach a slight degree of empathy. This keen sense of touch had helped her avoid a lot of trouble when she was working at the orphanage. "I won't scream. Can you let go of me a little?" "I can't breathe," Sister Selene said while crying bitterly. The guy who covered her mouth hesitated for a moment, but he eventually loosened his grip a little. "Thank you," Sister Selene said gratefully. "If I hurt you again, are you still going to thank me?" The guy suddenly said. Sister Selene was startled, not because of the guy's words, but because of his voice. She had heard this voice before, not long ago. "Mr. Robert?" Sister Selene instantly quivered. "Is that you?" "Mr. Robert." She loosened her grip a little, but now she loosened it all at once. Sister Selene turned around and saw a hooded man standing behind her. Wasn't that the seriously injured guy who was sent to Scholar Calvin's house, Robert? "It's really you, Mr. Robert." Sister Selene was surprised. But why are you here?" Robert suddenly made a shushing gesture, then lowered his voice and said, "Listen, there seems to be a strange sound outside." "What's that?" At this moment, Sister Selene pointed at the floor in fear. On the floor, there was something that came from the corridor outside. It looked like black sludge. Not good. This is the special ability of Brain Man. Robert's expression changed drastically. He already made his move. "Oh no, it's too late." "What the hell is this?" Sister Selene exclaimed in shock as she kept dodging the spreading black sludge. They soon retreated to the end of the room and had nowhere to go. Seeing that the black sludge was about to spread to her feet, Sister Selene even began to tiptoe. "Sister Selene, you're a good person. You shouldn't be involved in this," Robert quickly said, "but now that things have come to this, it's not something we can control. Please remember what I'm about to say. If we wrap our feet with something and try not to touch the black sludge, we should be able to get out, right? It's useless. This is not real sludge, but a special power. Once you touch it, you'll be dragged in with no possibility of breaking free," Robert said. "We'll go to another place." "Another place?" Sister Selene was stunned. She subconsciously thought of the church with the 36-winged angel statue that her consciousness went to when she fainted not long ago. "Yes, another place. I can't even name it. We might even get separated," Robert said quickly. Robert quickly said, "But no matter what, you must remember not to forget your faith. Also, remember to follow the spirits." Spirits? It's too late." Robert took a deep breath. "Remember my words. If possible, I'll try my best to find you first." With that, Robert gritted his teeth and walked into the black sludge. In front of Sister Selene's eyes, Robert's body quickly sank into the black sludge. In just a few breaths, Robert had disappeared. He was still completely submerged in the black sludge. But the black sludge didn't stop spreading. Sister Selin stuck close to the wall and stood at the last position, and at this moment, there was only one position left in the room. Dear Sage, please tell me what should I do? Like a drowning person, Sister Selin was finally submerged in the black sludge, and the black sludge was still spreading. Ladies and gentlemen, the audience in front of the TV, finally. The host recited his lines excitedly on the stage, but the recording hall that could accommodate more than 1,000 audience members was strangely quiet at this moment. Because, excluding the Holy Maiden substitutes who were about to go on stage, there were only 30 to 40 people here, including the director and cameraman. That's right, this place was almost empty, but the Holy Maiden ceremony was broadcasted live. Okay, let's welcome our Holy Maiden substitutes to come on stage. The first one to come on stage is... The host waved his hand, and the lights on the stage lit up. The first one to come on stage is... You. The host, who was speaking, suddenly stopped talking. At the center of the stage, there was a figure slowly floating up from the bottom. It was a girl with a pale face. In an instant, the Durand City Lord stood up with a look of disbelief on his face. Hua Huang. The host was standing next to the girl who appeared from the ground. After calling out the name of the pale-faced girl, he was so scared that he fell to the ground. Didn't you? The host immediately threw away the microphone in his hand and scrambled off the stage. The sound of gulping was heard. The cameramen at the front of the stage were stunned, but their instincts drove them to focus on the pale-faced girl. Huang, this girl who had clearly died on the stage, had once again appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Just like how she had died, she had reappeared in an extremely strange manner. Who is this? The city lord of Durand City hesitated as he carefully walked down the stairs. But after a few steps, a stream of light shot into the stage, followed by another stream of light. It was Angel Jarabe and Angel Londo. The two high angels sandwiched the resurrected Hua Ying in the middle of the stage. It seems that we don't need to investigate. The truth will be revealed soon. Angel Londo smiled. Finally, the main character has appeared. Huang looked around the recording hall and finally fixed her eyes on Angel Londo. She chuckled. Hi, Angel. You're just a high-level puppet. You probably don't even know what you are. That's not important. Angel Londo said indifferently. I only need to know that you can't escape today. Escape? Why should I escape? A strange smile appeared on Hua Ying's face. I was hoping that you could run away. As she spoke, Huang suddenly raised her hand. In her palm, there was a book with a strange cover, slowly turning. Suddenly, the rotating book stopped and flipped open. The pages rustled. Londo, there's danger. Suddenly, a shout came from the edge of the recording hall. Angel Londo subconsciously looked in the direction of the voice. Didn't that guy come in with Jarabe? But Angel Londo's doubts stopped there. In an instant, a circle of black sludge appeared under Angel Londo's feet. Under the effect of the sludge, Angel Londo's body sank more than half. Angel Londo was shocked and angry. At this time, he didn't care about the rule of not easily revealing his identity as an angel in the Holy Light Kingdom. In an instant, two pairs of white wings spread out and pulled out half of his body that had sunk into the sludge. However, at this time, two shadow arms emerged from the sludge and wrapped around Angel Londo's body. Without saying anything, they dragged Angel Londo into the black sludge. Everyone looked at this scene in horror. Their minds were blank, as if they couldn't think. This book is... Only Boss Luo looked at the book in Hua Ying's hand at this time. He seemed to have a strange feeling. What's this? Is it a special effect? The special effects are pretty good. This year's Holy Maiden ceremony finally has something new. They even made an angel. This ceremony, I'm going to blow up. Everyone watched everything that happened on the stage of the Holy Maiden ceremony through the screen in amazement. They only felt that it was very fresh and they couldn't wait to be there. However, the audience, who could have been present, were still blocking the entrance of the venue. They were fiercely protesting against the officials' unreasonable disqualification of entering the venue. Among the protesting crowd, a girl looked up thoughtfully at the huge venue building. The girl seemed to see that the entire venue was shrouded in a huge shadow at this time. The girl didn't speak. She silently moved forward through the crowd and soon came to the entrance. She jumped over the guardrail and continued to walk past the venue guards who blocked her way. Until she walked into the entrance passage, no one came up to stop her. It was as if no one saw her. This young girl from Donremy Village, Jeanne d'Arc. Chapter 2145. Even if it was an adult, the collapse often happened in a flash. Under the stage, many people were scared by the scene of Angel Londo being dragged into the black swamp. A cameraman stepped back subconsciously at this time. His actions were especially obvious among the petrified and motionless crowd. Hua Ying's eyes suddenly fell on the cameraman. No. The cameraman's lips trembled as he turned around and screamed toward the door. A scary smile appeared on Hua Ying's face again. Under the cameraman's feet, a small black swamp appeared in an instant. Save me. He fell into the black sludge and struggled with all his might. Hold on tight. A golden light flashed, and a golden rope flew out. The other end of the golden rope was caught in the hand of Angel Grebe. Like grabbing a life-saving swimming pool, the cameraman held the rope in his hand and quickly circled it twice. There was even a touch of joy on his face. I'm saved. But soon, he knew that he was happy too early. It was because when he pulled the rope tightly, the rope suddenly loosened. On the stage, the Angel Jarabi had sunk deep into the black sludge. The cameraman's brain went blank for an instant. A shadow arm emerged from the black sludge at this time, and the shadow even pressed his head directly into it. On the stage, Angel Grebe was in a state of struggle at this time, just like Angel Londo before. Seeing such a scene, the people in the recording hall, as if waking up from a dream, began to scream and run toward the nearest exit. However, the faster they ran, the faster the black sludge appeared. At this moment, the ordinary-looking man who followed Angel Jarabe had appeared on the stage. The ordinary-looking man looked at Hua Ying, and at the same time, he extended his hand to Angel Jarabe, who was about to be dragged into the swamp. Angel Grebe, who was being dragged in, floated up little by little. But at this moment, dozens of arms emerged from the black sludge in an instant and directly dragged Angel Grebe into it. The ordinary man frowned as if thinking about something. How does it feel to see your subordinates in danger with your own eyes? But there's nothing you can do, Lord Archangel. Hua Ying's voice slowly rang out. Her voice seemed to echo through a small and empty room. It was especially clear and bright. This is not Hua Ying's voice. You are not Hua Ying. Who are you? The Duran City Lord's voice suddenly rang out at this moment. His face was filled with fear, but he was one of the few people who could still stand. He even wanted to walk towards the stage, but his feet seemed to be filled with cement, and he couldn't move. Hua Ying ignored him and didn't even look at him. However, a black swamp had already appeared beneath the feet of the Duran City Lord. In a flash, more than half of his body had already fallen. What is your purpose? The ordinary-looking man finally opened his mouth and asked. Hua Ying chuckled. Oh, so you're not going to save him? The man said calmly, they didn't die. They were just dragged somewhere. If I stop you, I can naturally bring them back. It's because of the book in your hand, right? I can feel its extraordinariness and strangeness. This is a rare treasure, Yi Zichen said. Hua Ying slowly raised the book floating in her hand. I call it Book of Gaia. Gaia? The ordinary-looking man frowned slightly. Gaia, this was a taboo with many meanings. It meant many things, but it couldn't be clearly distinguished at once. That's right, Book of Gaia. Hua Ying's eyes narrowed, and it's something specially prepared for the Supreme of the Holy Light Kingdom. With that, Hua Ying had already spread out her hands, and Book of Gaia flew between her hands at this time and spread out 180 degrees. Hua Ying, a strange voice sounded at the same time. I have prepared the best stage for you. At this moment, the ordinary-looking man made his move. He just took one step and appeared in front of Hua Ying after one step. He reached out and covered Book of Gaia. Holy light, boundless holy light, the kind of extreme light that seemed to want to absorb the world, instantly lit up. A huge beam of light rushed from the venue of the Holy Maiden ceremony directly into the sky. But when the light disappeared, The ordinary-looking man on the stage had already disappeared. Only Hua Ying, who was holding Book of Gaia, was still standing in the same place. At this time, she glanced at the audience in a daze and said calmly, "You should also enter this stage. Everyone, this is... No, don't come over." At the several entrances and exits of the recording hall, the black sludge had already entered. On the stairs, the sludge flowed down crazily. Many people couldn't avoid it and disappeared one after another like people swallowed by a flood. The girl on the stage watched all this with a blank expression. At this time, what the people in the recording hall didn't know was that the entire venue was now covered with this black sludge. Behind the stage, the managers of the 7 capitals, the judges of the ceremony, the staff, the Holy Maiden candidates were swallowed one by one. The survivors curled up in the places where the black sludge didn't spread. But looking at the situation, they probably couldn't hold on for long. This kind of horror, this kind of strangeness could easily make people collapse, especially the young girls. Several scared girls were hiding behind the most popular senior sister, Yulia, as if only behind her was a safe haven. These girls even grabbed Yulia's arm tightly. "Didn't you guys just say that you're best friends?" Yulia rolled her eyes as she wrote. These girls, to put it nicely, were hiding in her safe haven, but to put it bluntly, they were using her as a shield. "Senior Yulia, what should we do? I don't want to die. Let's pray." Senior sister, Yulia, took a deep breath. The girls froze and said subconsciously, "Pray." Yulia nodded with a pious expression. "That's right. Pray. As long as our prayers reach the end of the faith, we will be able to let the saint hear us. The saint will save us. So pray. Right? Pray. Pray." The girls instantly let go of Yulia and put their palms together. It had to be said that praying was something that everyone in the Holy Light Nation had learned since they were young, and it had become an instinct for them. The girls recited the prayers with familiarity, and pious expressions appeared on their faces. "Please save us, Saint." Seeing this, senior sister, Yulia, suddenly shrugged and slowly took a few steps back. She thought to herself, "Just pray. Let's hope it works. I won't play with you guys anymore." The black mud had already spread to the feet of the girls, and they opened their eyes in shock. Senior Yulia? They saw that Senior Yulia wasn't standing on the ground. Instead, she was floating tens of centimeters above the ground. It was like a safe distance. The black mud spread over, but it didn't drag Yulia into it. However, the young girls sank into the mud and disappeared. Yulia, who was floating in the air, frowned. Then, she casually threw something into the black mud below, a piece of bread. However, the bread just floated above the mud and didn't disappear. "Only people can do this?" Yulia murmured thoughtfully. "By the way, I saw the shop owner at the front desk. What should I do now?" At this moment, dozens of black shadows emerged from the black mud and tried to grab Yulia. She blinked, and her body strangely faded away as if she had turned into smoke. Unexpectedly, the black shadow of a hand grabbed her feet and pulled her down abruptly. Senior sister, Yulia, blinked again with a dumbfounded look on her face. "F***CK? What's going on? Save me. Save me, Remia. Hold on to me tightly. Don't let go." Remia was lying on the table, trying her best to grab a girl who was stuck in the black mud. She was on the ground, but she felt as if she was in an ocean of black mud. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could only watch as her friend was slowly swallowed into the black mud. Her friend was crying in fear. However, even angels couldn't escape the suction force of the mud, let alone a girl. The girl was eventually dragged into the mud, but Remia still held on to her hand tightly. You can't give up on your friend. This was one of the rules written by the saint of the City of Freedom. As a candidate for the position of Holy Maiden, she had been determined to become a Holy Maiden since she was young, so she could memorize the rules of the Holy Maiden. Therefore, she couldn't give up on her friend. Even at the last moment, Remia didn't let go of her hand. This meant that she was also dragged into the black mud. "I wonder if Tahir is all right," Her entire body sank into the black sludge, almost beyond her eyes. Remia only felt that her consciousness had become very hazy in this environment, and it was difficult for her to think. Remia, hold on to me. Who is calling me? Dahir. It seems to be Dahir's voice. Remia forced herself to open her eyes, but she only saw a blurry shadow appear in front of her. She only felt that her palm was being held tightly. At this moment, she only had one palm left, and it was still outside the black sludge. Damn it! Even a helpless and desperate voice sounded. Since they couldn't catch Remia, then, at this moment, a figure jumped from the table into the black swamp without hesitation. We can't escape, but it seems like you don't plan to escape. At this moment, Miss Elizabeth was standing on the judge's platform, looking at the black mud flowing down below. Boss Luo was also standing on the platform at this moment. In this situation, it was impossible to escape. Not only them, but several judges, 2 or 3 managers, and several directors and staff members of the recording hall also chose to stand on something. However, they didn't know how long they could stay on the ground. Hey, say something, Ms. Elizabeth said again. At the same time, she looked in the direction of Ludic and Scholar Calvin. A strange scene happened. Scholar Calvin suddenly jumped into the black mud. He didn't even struggle. Ludic couldn't even catch Scholar Calvin. He could only watch as Scholar Calvin disappeared. Does this old guy know something? Miss Isabel frowned. She glanced at the black sludge under her feet. Suddenly, she turned around. What are you going to do? Boss Luo seemed to be planning to jump into the mud like Scholar Calvin. Boss Luo smiled and said, Ms. Isabel, I'll see you later. What? Boss Luo nodded and took a step forward. Instead of jumping in, it was better to say he stepped into it calmly. Miss Isabel couldn't help but frown when she saw the adult she had finally taken an interest in disappear just like that. She, who always had a smile on her face, flew into a rage. Why are you so sure that I'll still follow you? However, at this moment, a figure chose to jump into the black sludge. It was her cousin, the principal of the City of Freedom Academy, Ludic. One by one, Ms. Isabel gritted her teeth and took a deep breath. She looked at the mud below and said, I hate things that have been decided early, but have no choice. She still jumped into the mud, not because she believed in Scholar Calvin or Ludic, not because of Boss Luo's words of wait for her. She just believed in herself, because Hua Ying had said that she had prepared a special stage. Since it was a stage, it meant that even if one was dragged into the black mud, one would not necessarily die. Yes, she just believed in her own judgment. That was all. The girl walked in a corridor filled with black mud. The black mud slowly moved toward her, but there was no fear on the girl's face. Oh, interesting. The girl looked indifferent and walked straight into the black mud. Don't touch me. I'll go in by myself. The black sludge surged a few times, as if it had suddenly retreated a little. However, it was quickly pushed forward by the sludge that came from behind. In the end, a door actually began to emerge from the black sludge in front of them. The girl walked in. Chapter 2146. High in the sky, in the palace in the clouds. Other than Maria, who couldn't leave the monastery, and Archangel St. John, who had left not long ago, the others were all here. John has been down for some time. Did something happen? A voice suddenly asked. Let's take a look. Another voice said. A rainbow suddenly appeared in the palace. It was a completely round rainbow, and it looked like a mirror. What appeared on the mirror was the scene of the Freedom City. In a mirror, the people of Freedom City were very lively. Under the double blessing of the Holy Maiden ritual and the Saint's Resurrection Day, the negative effects of Holy Fall had been reduced to the lowest point. It doesn't seem like there's any problem. Everything is normal. The Supreme who had created the rainbow muttered, Perhaps John has his own considerations. We don't have to worry. I hope so. What are you worried about? Don't you think that everything is going too smoothly? Indeed. Don't forget that the guy who killed the Saint of Freedom City hasn't appeared yet. It might be waiting for something. But we are all here. Even if indescribable existence descends, we can resist it. Besides, this is the Holy Light Kingdom. We have nothing to fear. Quiet. The new consciousness is about to hatch. Everyone, please bless this new consciousness. This is the only way to create a saint that completely belongs to the kingdom of heaven. Then let's begin. The palace in the clouds burst forth with extreme holy light in an instant. The holy light covered the entire palace in the clouds, turning it into a huge light cocoon. In the end, the black sludge didn't spread out of the holy maiden ritual. However, at this moment, other than the guards guarding the entrances, there was no one in the huge hall. At least, there were no normal guys. In this place, only that peculiar fellow known as the Brain Man was wandering around like a ghost. Huang stood alone in the recording hall covered by black sludge and slowly opened her eyes. This is all I can do. I still can't completely. She looked down at the Book of Gaia in her hands. Until now, she still couldn't completely control it. She could only use some limited functions. But that was enough. She could only use this part of the function, but it was enough for her to trap the archangel of the heavenly kingdom. It was enough for her to hide from the 7 capitals in the palace in the clouds. It was enough to buy her enough time. At this time, Huang walked directly to a camera under the stage in the recording hall. She directly integrated the Book of Gaia into the camera. Then, it's time for me to step onto this stage. She chuckled, then opened her arms, leaned back, and sank into the mud. Why did the screen suddenly turn black? Is there no signal? I just paid for the service. Trash holy letter. Not only is it expensive, it's also very expensive. Wait a minute, there seems to be an image. Indeed, the 45-degree Shurkill hand chop is the truth. What is this? Why does it look so? The sky was dark as a crayon. A few crows were chirping as they flew past. What is this? Crow, isn't it obvious? I know it's a crow, but why would it be a crow like this? And what we look like now? Don't ask me. Haha. I guess this is probably a dream. Otherwise, why would we become characters in a crayon painting? Ha 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 ha. The crayon gray sky was really like the sky painted with crayons. It was just that it was not a piece of paper that could be seen everywhere, but the entire sky. Crows, wind, trees, grass, flowers, mountains, even people, everything existed in the form of a crayon painting at this time. This was the world they saw when they woke up after falling into the black mud. The candidates for the Holy Maiden, but they were not in the same place. For example, one of them was almost crazy, and the other was barely normal but was on the verge of collapse. At this time, they seemed to be in a valley. How could this be? Holy Maiden, save us. The girl who was still sober knelt on the ground at this time, put her hands together with the greatest piety, and prayed. However, her only companion had already opened her hands in a small garden at this time, spinning and laughing happily. It was like she was drunk, like she was using some addictive drugs. Flower, 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 what a beautiful flower. The girl who was spinning in the flower bed suddenly stopped. She plucked a flower with only 4 petals from the ground and put it on her head. The flower was completely in the style of a kindergarten child. The petals weren't even fully painted with colors. However, at this time, the flower on the girl's head suddenly opened its mouth. It became bigger, as big as a wash basin, and its jagged but very sharp teeth bit the girl's neck in an instant. Ha! Blood splashed out. The other girl who was praying felt something hit her face. She slowly opened her eyes, only to see that her companion was only left with half of her body at this time. Flower. The crayon flower with its big mouth was slowly turning towards her at this time. At the same time, the flowers in the garden stood up one by one. Their movements were uniform like marching ants, and soon surrounded the praying girl in the middle, and then opened their mouths. No, 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 no. Don't come over. Senior Yulia, wake up, wake up. Don't disturb me. I'm about to crack this demonic god's treasure house. Senior Yulia, wake up. Stop dreaming. It shook violently. She suddenly fell out of the demonic god's treasure house, watching the endless source of the world fly away in front of her eyes, and her heart was filled with hatred and resentment. From now on, you're the one I'll hunt down for the rest of my life. Huh? What are you? Senior Yulia blinked her eyes at this time, because she saw something, strictly speaking, that could not be called a person. She saw a stickman. Yes, she was not mistaken. It was really a stickman made up of only a few black lines. At most, it was drawn with a few strokes, and it barely looked like long hair. "It's me, Shaman. Senior, have you forgotten me?" At this time, the stickman showed a crying expression, and the two sizes on its face were about to squeeze together. Senior Yulia rubbed her head at this time. She had some impression of this voice. It seemed to be the voice of one of the girls who kept chattering around her in the backstage of the Holy Maiden ceremony. "Huh, why on my hands?" Senior Yulia looked at her hands in disbelief. Unlike this stickman who called itself Shaman in front of her, she was actually, no, not only her hands, but also her body and everything around her, everything. She could even smell the smell of crayons in the air. You were the one who woke me up. Can you tell me what happened?" Senior sister, Yulia, looked at the matchstick man and asked tentatively. "I don't know." Although the stickman's eyes were only two sizes, its expression was very rich. Shaman's voice was rich. It was a voice mixed with panic and bewilderment. "I only know that after I woke up, I became like this. Since the others are not here, I don't dare to go outside." This was an extremely simple house. It could even be described as having 4 bare walls. Senior Yulia frowned. She slowly got up and then symbolically stepped on the floor a few times. This feeling is no different from stepping on a real floor. In other words, we have become a part of this crayon drawing world? You really didn't go out of this house? Senior Yulia asked calmly. The stickman nodded quickly and then said nervously, "Although I didn't dare to go out, but there seemed to be a lot of people outside. I also heard some voices." "Let's see." Senior Yulia nodded, then quickly walked to the edge of the window and pushed open the silver-painted glass. Their line of sight immediately became much wider. There was a street outside. The style of the house extended all the way outside. At this moment on the street ahead, there were people who looked like villagers gathered. Senior sister? What are you going to do? Let's go outside and take a look." Senior Yulia didn't even turn her head and directly jumped out of the window. In any case, there's nothing we can do if we stay here and be afraid. It's better to find out the reason why we became like this. Seeing her senior sister jump out of the window, the stickman girl hurriedly chased after her and said in a panic, Wait for me, Senior Yulia." In the midst of the colorful crowd, there was actually a rather large open space. In the open space, there was a stickman who looked similar to Shaman. They were really similar, apart from the fact that the lines on her face were slightly thicker. Apart from this, there was also a village chief. That's right, it was a village chief with the word "Village Chief" written on his chest. In fact, all the pedestrians they saw along the way had similar words written on their chests. "Villager, villager, villager. What are they doing?" Shaman nervously grabbed Yulia's arm at this moment. There was one thing she didn't understand, and that was why Senior Yulia looked similar to villager, or at least had a richer appearance, while she was just a stickman. That guy probably wants to pull out the sword on the ground. The sword with the word "Divine Sword" written on it. Senior Yulia rolled her eyes, looking as if she didn't want to complain anymore. At this moment, Shaman suddenly said, "She's Duo Air. This is Duo Air's voice. This stickman is Duo Air." With that said, Shaman wanted to rush toward her companion in the open space. But in the next instant, Senior Yulia grabbed her arm. Senior Yulia said, "Let's observe the situation first." Shaman nodded. "Have you really decided to pull out the divine sword?" At this time, the village chief, on the empty ground, said loudly, "Only the truly brave can pull out this godly sword that has been passed down for generations. Have you really made up your mind? Okay, stop wasting time." The stickman Duo Air, standing next to the divine sword, said impatiently, "I can roughly guess what's going on here. Although I don't know how to leave here. I just have to pull out the divine sword, right? Completing a mission or something like that." "Have you really decided to pull out the divine sword?" The village chief said again. "Only a true hero can pull out the divine sword." The matchstick figure Duo Air muttered, "Maybe we've been knocked unconscious and move to this virtual game-like world? This is the technology of the seven capitals. The Freedom City shouldn't have this kind of technology. Could it be the Dawn City? They like to do these weird things. Forget it. I don't care. Have you really decided to pull out this divine sword? Hero. She was too lazy to pay attention to the village chief, who only knew how to repeat a few words. She reached out and grabbed the hilt of the divine sword and exerted force. The divine sword loosened up instantly. The crowd immediately let out a burst of surprised gasps. It works. Duo Air thought quickly and exerted more force. Huh! With a loud shout, Duo Air felt that she had pulled out the divine sword completely. She did it. There was a trace of joy in her heart. Ever since she came to this strange world, she had almost gone crazy. However, when she raised her head and looked at the divine sword that she had pulled out, she was completely stunned. The divine sword that she pulled out was a carrot with rabbit ears. The hilt of the sword turned into a rabbit's ears. This is the divine sword. Duo Air froze on the spot. At the same time, bursts of laughter sounded in the surroundings. It was the villagers and even the village chief who were watching from the side. She pulled it out. She really pulled it out. The lady's favorite carrot hero has appeared. Our village doesn't have to be afraid of the Rabbit Demon King anymore. Rabbit, what rabbit? Duo Air asked subconsciously. At this moment, the surrounding villagers rushed to her side and tied her up together with the carrot with rabbit ears. Then, they lifted her up. The sky turned from day to night. In the sky, there was a snoring crescent moon wearing a nightcap. On the ground, a group of villagers held Duo Air up as wind blew under their feet. Soon, the villagers came to a big mountain and saw a huge pink rabbit walk out. Without saying anything, the villagers threw Duo Air and the carrot with rabbit ears into the huge pink rabbit's mouth. Then, the villagers danced and left. In front of the huge cave, only Charmin, the matchstick figure, and the kindergartner, Yulia, stood there in a daze. Senior. Yulia, Duo Air. Duo Air is she? She was eaten. Yulia shuddered. F***CK. There's poison in this place. At this moment, the sky was raining glass beads. No, they were gems that looked like glass beads. Gems after gems. It was a shower of gems. Chapter 21:47. There were screams of surprise, anger, and even despair. Duo Air. My Duo Air. No way, no way. However, the avatar of a beautiful girl on the screen had completely dimmed down. No matter how hard the people standing or sitting in front of the screen poked at the avatar of the girl on the screen, there was no reaction. But before that, people discovered one thing. The stage of the Holy Maiden ceremony was unfolding in a way that had never been seen before. Since the appearance of the cool special effects on the stage that could be seen through the screen had rapidly developed in an unusual direction. When the screen brightened up, many avatars with grids appeared on the screen. When these avatars combined into a huge picture, there would always be one or two curious people who would touch the grids on the screen. When they clicked on one of the avatars, the scene would change. Just like choosing a TV channel, some of the avatars were in the same style or environment while some were in different environments. Other than the Holy Maiden candidates, there were many other avatars on the grids. For example, the managers of the seven capitals, the workers at the venue, and the judges of this ceremony. At first, the audience thought it was interesting because they could choose the girl they liked and supported. They could only look at the girl they liked and didn't have to wait for the other Holy Maiden candidates. Too bad we can't fast forward to the awards ceremony. But my Yulia is the best in the world. Bulsh asterisk T. Selin is the best. Last year's Europa volleyball tournament. Have you forgotten Selin's heroism? Duo Air. My Duo Air. No, it's not real. Then one of the girls died. She was thrown into the mouth of a rabbit and was chewed. The audience with headphones could even hear the sound of bones breaking and screams. Duo Air screams. But it was far from over. After Duo Air died in the rabbit's mouth, a huge black cross appeared in the sky above the Holy Maiden ceremony. There was obviously something nailed to the cross. It's Duo Air. That was the holy maiden candidate whose body was broken into pieces. She was nailed to the black cross in the sky with her appearance before she died. This was probably not the so-called cool special effect. Freedom City instantly fell into a strange silence until someone dropped the Coke on the ground. Fear surged like a tidal wave. In the sky above the Holy Maiden ceremony, a second black cross appeared. On the cross was a young girl who had been pierced by dozens of swords. Then the third cross appeared. The fourth cross appeared. The fifth cross appeared. In the hospital, in the independent observation ward. How could that be? LeVar's eyes narrowed as he stared at the screen. He slowly gulped and lowered his head to look at the phone in his hand. Ever since the angel appeared on the stage, he had been sending messages to the principal, but there was no reply. This time, LeVar directly called the principal's private number. Notification: unable to connect, possibly not in the service area. What is this? LeVar had a shocked expression on his face. The reason why he was able to calm down was probably because of his experience in Dong Remy village. Could it be the scenery of that mansion again? This was the first thing that came to his mind. The place where there is not Dong Remy village. A voice quietly rang out. It was a voice that was slightly hoarse and powerless. LeVar turned his head and saw that the guy that he fished up from the sewer was awake and sitting up. He was also looking at the Holy Maiden ceremony on the screen. How do you know about Dong Remy village? LeVar frowned and quietly picked up the pager in the ward. How would I know? How would I not know? Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand because you don't know who I am. The guy covered in bandages sighed and said, Even I don't know who I am. Who are you? LeVar asked directly. I'm no one. I'm not even myself. He shook his head and said, Speaking of which, the guy who bit me is also here, right? He's a very important person to you, isn't he? LeVar didn't say anything, but something flashed through his mind. On a rainy day, a woman hugged her child and was chased out by the landlord. The woman couldn't support the living expenses of the two of them anymore. Because of her self-degeneration, the woman was no longer a God's chosen. She prayed less and less, and the wish power she received became less and less. The woman hopelessly hugged her child to the bridge by the river and prepared to jump off. I can jump off, but can you give this child to me? I actually want a little brother. From today onwards, you're my little brother, a real little brother, because it seems like you're really the illegitimate child of my dissolute and indecent father. I can't give you any of my family property, not in this lifetime, because it's all mine. But if you work for me, I can give you a very good salary. Do you want to consider it? You know what happened, don't you? It was unknown when LeVar had developed this habit of being calm in the face of trouble. He looked at the person he fished back from the sewer with a calm expression. Since President Ballum got rid of this guy must know a lot. He remembered that the people who threw him into the sewer shouted the name, Robert. I'm not sure, but Robert shook his head, but after waking up, I saw things from a different perspective. I can roughly guess what happened. Tell me, what do I have to do to save Ludic? At that moment, LeVar was no longer calm. Like a barrel of dynamite that had been ignited, he stood up abruptly and grabbed the collar of Robert's hospital gown. If you knew but didn't tell me, then I would have been killed. I promise I'll let you experience something worse than being bitten by rats in the sewers. Robert looked at LeVar's sharp eyes and suddenly sighed. He slowly said, First, take me out of here. After all, if I stay here, even if I can do something, I won't have the chance. Okay. LeVar didn't hesitate. Leave the hospital immediately. Isabel didn't know where this place was, but at least it seemed safe for the time being. She was walking in a gloomy castle. There was nothing wrong with her body, except that she was a little frightened, which caused her face to turn pale and her mind to be a little restless. She was fine for the time being. However, she was the only one left. Logically speaking, she jumped into the black mud right after that guy, surnamed Luo. They should have fallen into the same place, but she had been walking in this gloomy castle for at least 20 minutes, but she didn't see anyone. She wanted to go out of the castle to take a look, but she couldn't find the way out. It was as if she had fallen into a castle maze. Suddenly, Isabel felt that she seemed to have stepped on something. The floor suddenly sank a little. At this moment, There were some squeaking sounds coming from the dim corridor in front of him. Isabel frowned. In the darkness, pairs of crimson eyes suddenly appeared. They were densely packed and were rapidly approaching her. Isabel subconsciously took a few steps back. Finally, the rapidly approaching eyes revealed their true colors. They were bats. As if the corridor was filled with bats, they were crazily flying toward her. Isabel instantly gasped. She turned her head and wanted to run away without thinking. However, the heel of the high-heeled shoes she wore for the ceremony broke at this moment. Isabel fell on the wall. She felt a sharp pain in her ankle. She might have sprained it badly. Seeing that the bats were about to pounce on her, Isabel subconsciously stretched out her hands in front of her. At this moment, her body seemed to be pulled up by something. Isabel felt as if she was being held in someone's arms. Then, she rolled on the ground and rolled into something that looked like a groove. It was a man. Isabel subconsciously frowned, and it was the smell of an adult, greasy man. After hiding in the groove, the man pulled up a lid and covered the place. But this place was extremely crowded, and Isabel even felt that she could not breathe. She could only hear the man's heavy breathing. Both of them dared not to make a sound at this time. After a long time, when they could no longer hear the movement of the bats outside, Isabel frowned and said in a low voice, "Those bats should have gone. We could go out now. You have been touching for so long for free. Isn't it enough?" Sorry, although I can't help it. I can't help it. After all, this place is too crowded." Good figure. The lid that covered the two of them suddenly opened, and the man flipped out and then fell to the ground. Isabel hurriedly got up at this time. She was the one who kicked the man out. Her tolerance was actually over the limit. However, when she saw clearly what she was hiding, she could not help but be stunned. Coffin? Lying in a coffin is better than being bitten to death by bats, right? A ray of moonlight shone through the glass, and they saw each other's faces through the moonlight. "How come it's you? A two-way plug?" The man suddenly burst out a very disgusted scream at this time. "Asses. Seth?" As for Isabel, she was in disbelief. "God, I thank you. If it weren't for the bad relationship between the two families, you would never be able to leave the detention room of the public security office in your life." The man, Mr. Assakes, picked his ears at this time and then blew at his fingers, blowing in the direction of Isabel. All of a sudden, she crawled out of the coffin uncomfortably as if ants were crawling on her body. Mr. Assakes shrugged at this time and said, "If you have the ability to put me in here now, I will thank you. Because no matter how bad a place like the detention room is always better than this damn place." At this time, Mr. Assakes walked to the side and seemed to take out something and knocked it. After a few times, suddenly there was a fire. He was lighting the candles on the wall. At this time, Isabel took a closer look at Mr. Assash's appearance. She saw that he was in rags, and there were only a few pieces of poor cloth wrapped around his private parts. In addition, Mr. Assash's hair was messy, and he had a lot of stubble. His body was even dirtier, like a beggar. "You?" Isabel opened her mouth and said subconsciously, "How did you become like this?" Mr. Assakes stretched out his hand and patted the wall at this time. On the wall, there were rows of eye engravings. The whole wall was covered with this kind of engraving. Mr. Assakes said indifferently, "If you have stayed in this damn place for more than half a year, you probably won't be much better than me, right?" "Half a year?" Isabel was stunned. "You have been here for half a year? How is that possible? I remember that not long ago, your mansion that was about to close down was involved in an incident. How did you stay here for half a year? Anyway, it's been this long." Mr. Assakes shook his head. "On the day of the Holy Maiden ceremony, after I sneaked into the venue, I was knocked out by something and then thrown here." "Oh, right. The Holy Maiden ceremony should have ended long ago, right? Who became the Holy Maiden? Has the saint been resurrected?" Isabel did not answer immediately. She frowned and said, "You just said that day." "Yes, that day. What's the problem?" "Mr. Assakes, I'm afraid." Isabel's face showed a touch of shock. I'm afraid. I came here on that day." Mr. Assakes opened his mouth and even approached Isabel, his hands grabbing her chest. "What are you doing? Isabel was instantly furious. Mr. Asake said, "Nothing. I just want to verify whether this two-way plug of yours is just a dream of mine. Why don't you F*** King die? Get out of here and feed the bats." However, Mr. Arthasius's body suddenly convulsed and fell to the ground. Isabel could not help but frown. "Don't pretend. Go. Go. Hide. Hide what?" Mr. Asakes raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot. His mouth was full of sharp teeth. "Open his mouth. Princess. Princess, wake up. Princess, wake up. Great, the princess is awake." "Princess," the girl slowly opened her eyes. Faces that were similar, yet different appeared in front of her eyes. She counted and found that there were 7 faces in total. 7 dwarf-like fellows with large beards. She was lying on a huge, colorful mushroom. The girl frowned and thought for a while. "Where is this?" "Princess, have you forgotten?" One of the bearded dwarfs quickly said, "After you were defeated by the queen, you escaped into the forest. The fact that you used the magic mirror to control the kingdom has been exposed. We could only follow you and run." "Huh?" The girl was not surprised. She said indifferently, "Then, where is the magic mirror?" "It has been confiscated by the queen." "Princess, what's wrong? Have you forgotten all these things?" Another bearded dwarf holding a spiked club exclaimed in shock. "It must be because the hunter sent to assassinate you fed you a poisonous mushroom." The girl was silent. The 7 bearded gnomes walked back and forth impatiently. The girl said coldly, "So, I'm a bad person?" "In theory, Your Highness." The 7 bearded dwarfs nodded at the same time. "You forced the king to death, launched a coup, and hanged your husband in the palace on the night of your wedding." The girl was silent again. The 7 bearded dwarfs looked at her. The girl slowly opened her palm, and a black butterfly made of flames slowly floated out of her palm. However, the strange thing was that the butterfly had only flown a few centimeters before it was annihilated and disappeared. The girl frowned. "It can be suppressed to this extent." "Eh." The bearded dwarves all revealed looks of surprise and excitement. "Your Highness, did you learn some vicious spells again? This is great, we can fight back. Do you want us to catch a few innocent girls for you as sacrifices?" The girl opened her mouth, then sighed and said helplessly, "Then other than you, how many subordinates do I have left?"